Chapter 1. In the 118th year of the Cataclysm, the annual awakening ceremony is taking place in the Awakener Square of base number 6. Shen Xingyan, are you nervous? In the huge team, a cute girl who had lost her childishness and exuded a youthful aura, wearing a dazzling red dress, looked at the thin man next to her with a nervous face and said. The sound is so soft that people feel comfortable after listening to it. A little bit, but it's okay. Although the thin young man named Shen Xingyan said this, his Adam's apple moving subconsciously proved that he was not at peace at the moment. After answering, Shen Xingyan still looked forward with a focused gaze, with no intention of continuing to talk to the girl next to him. Hearing this, the woman glanced at the man who said one thing and thought another, and couldn't help but curl her lips. She felt relieved and then looked straight ahead, staring at the huge white light curtain in the center of the square. The scorching sun baked the earth, and hundreds of thousands of young people gathered in the Awakener Square at the same time. They had no complaints about being burned by the scorching sun, just because now was the critical moment to change their destiny. At this moment in the square, everyone's eyes revealed a nervous look, as if they were taking the human race's college entrance examination a long time ago, but under this nervousness there was also a flickering light called hope. They stared straight ahead, as if they could see their bright future through the white curtain of light. Time passed slowly, and finally around 12 noon, the highest commander of base number 6 appeared out of nowhere in front of the huge light curtain, and his appearance caused cheers from the audience. No one in the square was surprised at the sudden appearance of officer number 6, because they had heard about the officer's magical abilities a long time ago. Looking at the middle-aged man who was suspended in the air out of thin air, everyone's eyes flashed with a burning light, revealing a strong sense of yearning. With the appearance of officer number 6, his voice, without any equipment, appeared in the ears of hundreds of thousands of people in the square at the same time. Children, it's time to decide your future destiny again. Every time this time comes, I feel very worried. 118 years ago, the blue planet suddenly expanded hundreds of times, and then the original energy began to explode. All living things became stronger and stronger, and our human race is no exception. While countries around the world had not yet adapted to this mutation, all kinds of strange creatures instantly spread across the entire blue planet. Their fighting power was so strong that no one at the time could match them. The human race suffered a severe blow as a result and almost disappeared completely from the blue planet. Fortunately, our ancestors fought bravely and used the hot weapons that were still somewhat useful at the time to resist the attacks of those disasters, which gave us a chance to recuperate. But as the disasters become more and more powerful after absorbing the original energy, thermal weapons have less and less effect on them. Fortunately, there is always a way out. At that life or death moment, these magical light screens appeared behind me in various places. After exploration, we found that every adult over the age of 18 will awaken his or her own profession and super talents as long as he or she passes through these light curtains. Then, by strengthening ourselves through the well-known star source, we can also master the correct method of original energy to enhance the power of these magical abilities. It is through these miraculous abilities and their fearless and heroic fighting that our ancestors have been able to keep us alive. Now let us raise our hands to the sky and pay tribute to them. When officer number 6 said this, he stopped talking. He solemnly raised his right hand and looked towards the sky, with a strong sense of sadness flashing in his eyes. Everyone present made the same move at the same time. Even the 3- or 4-year-old children followed suit and looked at the sky, with solemn expressions on their little faces. A minute later, everyone withdrew their gazes, and the voice of officer number 6 rang out, "Now is the time for you to do your part for the human race. I really hope that you can awaken a good combat profession and talent to inject new vitality into our base. Finally, I would like to give you one last piece of advice. No matter what the result of your awakening is, do not give up easily. The future belongs to you after all. Start awakening now." As the commander of base number 6 finished speaking, the huge white light curtain instantly turned into a dazzling red. That red color seemed to be full of the power of temptation, which aroused the already aroused fighting spirit of hundreds of thousands of people in the audience, making them even more energetic and their hearts began to beat wildly. The heads of each area should enter in succession according to the previously planned order, register after awakening, and wait in the area with the same profession. As the guiding voice sounded in the square, each area began to move. Base number 6 is divided into 5 major areas: East, South, West, North, and Central. The Central area is undoubtedly the one with the best conditions. Most of the people who have made outstanding contributions to the base and their families live there. It is also a place that people from other areas desire. The method to enter the Central area is also very simple, which is to exchange for military merits. As long as you have enough military merits, you can move in smoothly. Of course, if one awakens super talents, he will be invited to the Central area for key protection and training, and such people are 1 in a million. Due to the stable conditions in the Central area, it also has the largest number of people in this awakening team. Seeing the children from the Central area walking into the red light curtain first, people from other areas couldn't help but reveal an envious look. Shen Xingyan and the little girl named Chu Wei were naturally no exception. Looking at the figures rushing over, Shen Xingyan began to clench his hands tightly with yearning, as if trying to grab something. Chu Wei, who was standing beside him, naturally noticed Shen Xingyan's state, and after thinking about it, she understood his feelings very well. After all, although they are both from the North District and go to the same school, their family situations are very different. Shen Xingyan's parents unfortunately did not survive the disaster 8 years ago. Since then, the 10-year-old little Xingyan has taken on the responsibility of supporting him and his sister, which has made him think more and mature more than other children of the same age. This opportunity of awakening can really change his destiny. If it were me, I would probably perform worse than him. After thinking this through, Chu Wei gently patted Shen Xingyan's hand and gave him an encouraging look to comfort his nervous mood. Shen Xingyan, who had been giving psychological hints all the time, smiled slightly upon seeing this. His clenched hands stopped shaking, and he walked forward with the crowd. When he arrived in front of the huge light curtain, Shen Xingyan's steps began to stiffen unconsciously. However, before he could adjust himself, he was pushed into the light curtain by the tide of people. Then he felt as if a seed in his brain had broken out of its shell. Shen Xingyan knew that this was the beginning of his career and talent awakening. Although this was the first time he felt this strange feeling, he was not unfamiliar with it. After all, when he was in school, his teachers had repeatedly emphasized this kind of thing. The more it is at this time, the more we should not be impatient. We need to let him calmly experience the entire process of breaking out of the cocoon. This will be of great benefit to the improvement of his future abilities. Before Shen Xingyan could fully appreciate the feeling, he was thrown out by the light curtain. This scene made him feel a chill in his heart. The various signs that would appear upon awakening were all discussed in school, and Shen Xingyan kept them all in mind. The phenomenon of being thrown out at an extremely fast speed indicated that the possibility of him awakening to a combat profession was much smaller. Thinking of this, Shen Xingyan suddenly panicked and quickly looked at the black card that appeared out of thin air in his hand. After awakening, everyone will have something like an ID card, which is called the Star Source card. It records the card holder's occupation and personal information, and has communication and transaction functions. More importantly, people can connect to Xingyuan through it. Shen Xingyan quickly put the Xingyuan card on his forehead and checked the information on it. Name, Shen Xingyan No 1181204331-9527. Occupation, farmer. Professional skills, 1. Consume a certain amount of energy points to increase the growth rate of crops within a specified range by 10%. The larger the range, the more energy points are consumed. The duration is 10 hours, and the skill cooldown is 24 hours. Strength, 10 points. Agility, 10 points. Constitution, 10 points. Spirit, 10 points. HP, 100/100 points. Rating, 18/18 points. Physical strength, 10/10 points. Physical attack, 10 points. Spell attack, 10 defense, 10 points. Speed, 10 points. Talent, summon skeleton. Summon a skeleton monster with all attributes of 1 to fight, cooling time 24 hours. Money, 0 gold 0 silver 0 bronze. Entrance to Star World. A. Chapter 2. All the physical attributes in the attribute panel have reached the maximum value required by the school. This is within Shen Xingyan's expectations. After all, he is always the first in daily training, so it is not surprising to have such values. However, when Shen Xingyan saw the line of information about his profession, he suddenly felt disheartened and the light in his eyes went out. Farmer? Why this auxiliary profession? Even a blacksmith is better than a farmer, a profession that is common in many places. The blacksmith's talents and professional bonuses will more or less develop the body, so it is not impossible to kill disasters after having a strong body. But now it is the profession of farmer, and its professional skill bonus is only on crops, which is of no help to himself at all. The only use is to let him barely have enough food and clothing. And he also had his own talent skill, summoning a skeleton with all attributes set to 1. What kind of talent was this? I had never heard of such a talent. The talents of the farmer profession usually increase the speed of farming or physical strength. This kind of summoning talent skill is the first time he has seen it. It is quite rare. But what's the point of being rare? A skeleton with an attribute of 1 is not even a cannon fodder on the battlefield, let alone killing disasters. Awakening to this result made Shen Xingyan feel like he was falling into an icy cave. The scorching sun outside could not alleviate the coldness in his heart at all. He had been nervous for several days, and at this moment it seemed as if all the strength in his body had been drained away. He felt limp and powerless all over. Shen Xingyan moved his dying body to the registration staff to register his job. As the most basic auxiliary profession, the awakened farmer profession is undoubtedly the most numerous. After Shen Xingyan told the registration staff about his profession, the registrar, who had already registered a large number of farmers' occupations, looked at Shen Xingyan who was in a trance and couldn't help but sighed. He didn't say anything, but a trace of regret flashed in his eyes. After completing Shen Xingyan's occupation registration, the registrar did not ask any other questions and directly asked him to wait in the area with the largest number of people. After all, the upper limit of the profession is there. No matter how luxurious the other attributes are, they are only at the initial stage and will soon be surpassed. Asking more questions will only add to the sadness. At this moment, Shen Xingyan no longer cared about other people's opinions and attitudes. Hearing this, he just nodded slightly and walked slowly towards the farmer's occupation area. However, before he had taken a few steps, he heard an excited voice behind him, Shen Xingyan, I have awakened the mage profession, and I am a fire mage with explosive damage. How about you? Do you want me to protect you in the future? The appearance of Chu Wei's voice instantly drew the attention of the people around her, who saw the girl in a fiery red dress waving the card in her hand excitedly. Looking at this future female fire mage, everyone's faces were filled with envy. Shen Xingyan, who was slowly accepting the reality, heard the words, turned around to look at the excited figure, and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Although I was very happy that my desk mate had such an outcome, I couldn't help feeling bitter when I thought about my own bottom-ranked job. After quickly registering all the information, Chu Wei came closer and saw Shen Xingyan's expression. She instantly understood what he meant and quickly restrained her excited smile, fearing that her joy would hurt him. Chu Wei looked at Shen Xingyan with a worried look on her face. She swallowed the words back when they came to her lips. She felt that nothing she said would be appropriate now, so she could only look at Shen Xingyan silently and comfort him with her company. After a while, Shen Xingyan seemed to have come to his senses, and said with a slightly carefree smile on his face, "Don't worry, it's no big deal. Even if you are a farmer, you won't starve to death if you work in the star source every day. When my crops are harvested, I'll give you some to try." After hearing this, Chu Wei's worried look did not lessen, but became even more worried. Although she had anticipated that Shen Xingyan's awakened profession would not be very good, she did not expect it to be a purely logistical profession like a farmer. It was obvious that he was the hardest working and the best when he was studying and exercising in school, so why did God treat him like this? He just wanted to make himself stronger so that he could take good care of his family and go out to the outside world to eliminate disasters and avenge his parents. It is such a simple idea, but it is taken away by this profession. Looking at Shen Xingyan's pretending to be cheerful smile, Chu Wei's eyes began to turn red, and crystal tears instantly filled her eyes. Okay, don't be sad. This is the fact. There's no point in feeling sad. You still have to look forward. Shen Xingyan rubbed Chu Wei's hair. On the surface, he was comforting her, but at the same time, he seemed to be comforting himself. Chu Wei did not pretend to slap Shen Xingyan's hand away with disgust as she did before, but nodded meekly. After calming down, the two of them walked towards different areas under Chu Wei's worried gaze. Shen Xingyan came to the large farmer occupation area, feeling the low-pressure atmosphere here, and smiled bitterly in his heart. However, he still forced himself to cheer up rationally. After all, he still had to live in the future. Looking at the group of combat professionals immersed in a joyful atmosphere in the distance, although he felt unwilling, he could do nothing about it. As the last person was thrown out, the light curtain slowly turned white, and finally disappeared, as if it had never appeared. At this time, the commander of base number 6, who was floating in the air, looked at the various areas below and nodded with satisfaction. From his perspective, he found that the proportion of various professions this time was better than before. Knights, mages, warriors, assassins, priests, these combat professions and auxiliary combat professions, the proportion of people has reached about 15%, a great increase. These new forces will be their main force in dealing with disasters in the future. But when he looked at life-related occupations such as blacksmiths, tailors, farmers, etc., he shook his head with some regret and sighed slightly. Although life-related professions can also provide help to combatants, they have just awakened their professions and can only play a small role in a short period of time. Especially for the farmer profession, which has the largest number of awakenings, there is no way to grow crops on this land after the original energy explosion. The seeds planted will not show any reaction at all, and expecting to harvest is just a pipe dream. It can be said to be a profession in name only. However, the existence of Star Source has become their only way to survive, preventing them from starving to death while allowing the entire base to develop steadily and orderly. If it weren't for the existence of Xingyuan, this profession would probably be useless in the context of the current era. After the earliest group of ancestors completed their awakening through the light curtain, they found that everyone had received a mysterious black card, which they named Star Source card. At first they did not understand the purpose of this card and only regarded it as a commemorative symbol. Until they accidentally discovered that by sticking the cards on their foreheads, they could clearly understand all the information about themselves. Not only that, according to the prompts, their own consciousness could also enter a new world, the world of Star Source. This world of Star Source is similar to the previous online games. By fighting or doing some professional activities in that world, you will gain experience points to improve your professional level in the world of Star Source. Increasing the occupation level can increase the effectiveness of occupational skills. At the same time, the output of the occupation and the spoils of battle can be sold through the auction system or private transactions, or sold to the Xingyuan Mall in exchange for Xingyuan coins of equal value. What is even more surprising is that this Star Source coin can not only be used in the Star Source world, but can also be traded in the real world. It has now become the main currency in the base. The Star Source coin is a magical existence. In this era, it can be used to buy almost everything. As long as you have enough Star Source coins, you can basically achieve anything you want, including bringing things in the Star Source world into the real world. The existence of the Star Source world truly explains what it means that even if the gods cannot save the innocent, Krypton can change your destiny. Chapter 3. Children, you have completed the most important ceremony in your life, and you will be an independent individual from now on. There is still a long way to go. No matter how big or small the current result is from what we imagined, since it is destined, we must accept it, improve our professional level, and make ourselves and our families live a better life. You are the hope for the future of humanity. Please protect yourselves and fully tap your potential. We believe that through the efforts of generations of us, in the future we humans will be able to move freely in the outside world and no longer be confined to a small base. Finally, I hope you will be well in the future, and be safe and secure every year. After Commander Number 6 finished speaking, the 18-year-old boys present, regardless of whether they were in combat or life professions, felt a surge of fighting spirit in their hearts. Shen Xingyan is no exception. He has begun to think about how to use the current conditions to give himself and his sister a better life. However, before the hundreds of thousands of people present could vent their fighting spirit, the figure of Commander Number 6 suddenly disappeared from everyone's sight. The disasters in the periphery are becoming more and more serious. People like him must always be on high alert at the border to prevent any unexpected incidents. After all, Past experience and lessons have taught them that what seems like a very small negligence to them will often provide the best opportunity for disasters to attack, so they must be on guard. If it weren't for the importance of this ceremony, which forced him to come and preside over it, he might not be able to come back for a year or two. After officer number 6 left, the people in the square also left in an orderly manner according to the predetermined order, and were then taken back to their respective areas by the heads of each district. Shen Xingyan and Chu Wei returned to their school together, waiting for the next arrangements. The students in the entire school who had awakened combat professions and those in life professions were automatically divided into two camps. One side was silent, while the other side was bustling and noisy. The difference between the two was immediately apparent when compared. When Shen Xingyan and Chu Wei appeared, everyone looked at them, wanting to know what kind of careers the golden boy and jade girl in the school would eventually awaken to. When the team leader, Teacher Li, saw the two people coming, he walked up to them and wanted to ask them about the results. In all the training organized by the school, Shen Xingyan and Chu Wei are both outstanding, and they usually appear in the rankings of various competitions. Chu Wei's family conditions are relatively good. Both of his parents are veteran combat professionals. Needless to say, their financial situation is good. If it weren't for their military achievements, they would have probably moved to the central area long ago. Chu Wei usually has various nutritional supplements provided by her family to promote the growth of physical attributes, so it is not surprising that she has achieved such results. But Shen Xingyan is different. Ever since the disaster struck 8 years ago, his parents have been missing in the battles and are likely to have died. Over the years, Shen Xingyan has relied on the pension from the base and the inheritance left by his parents to not only support himself and his younger sister, but also achieve remarkable results that have attracted the attention of the entire school. This also became a passionate example promoted by the school to inspire the children in the school to strive for progress. From the moment he saw Shen Xingyan's condition, Teacher Li had made his own judgment in his mind. The words of inquiry just came to his lips, but he swallowed them back, and a trace of regret flashed in his eyes. After all, he has taught many classes of students and is very skilled in reading their emotions. Even if these young people try hard to hide it, from the subtle expressions they reveal, he can tell that the result this time will not be very good. The other students naturally noticed something. As peers during this sensitive period of adolescence, their senses were particularly strong. Hey, Shen Xingyan, looking at you, I'm afraid you have awakened the blacksmith profession. But you are so energetic, being a blacksmith is very suitable for you. Song Ji, who has always been crushed by Shen Xingyan in ranking, sneered at him in a sarcastic tone. This time, Song Ji was lucky enough to awaken the warrior profession. Although it did not reach his ideal mage profession, it was also a good profession with great potential in the future career prospects. After telling everyone his profession, he received envious looks from everyone, which made him feel a little inflated. Now he also noticed that although his nemesis Shen Xingyan looked calm on the surface, his expression revealed a sense of dejection. He immediately guessed that the other party must not have awakened any good profession, and his heart was suddenly overjoyed. Song Ji, are you itching for a fight? Are you looking for a beating? Before Shen Xingyan could reply, the enraged Chu Wei rushed over directly. If Shen Xingyan had not reacted and stopped her, Chu Wei would have probably hit him directly. Chu Wei was already upset when Shen Xingyan awakened the farmer profession and complained about the injustice of God. Now she was even ridiculed by Song Ji in public, and the anger in her heart suddenly emerged. Hey, Shen Xingyan, why are you so excited? Is there really something going on between you two? Song Ji said while looking at the two of them with a smirk on his face, the meaning of which was self-evident. Chu Wei was immediately filled with shame and anger when she heard this, and tried even harder to break through Shen Xingyan's blockade. Song Ji, no matter what profession I awaken, it is more than enough to weaken you now. If you don't believe me, you can try it. Shen Xingyan looked at the increasingly arrogant Song Ji and said calmly. The gap between them who have just awakened their professions is not that big. Their strength depends entirely on the accumulation of physical fitness before awakening, and Shen Xingyan has awakened with full attributes. Even though he is just a farmer, if he faces a player who has just awakened a combat profession, there is a high probability that he will be the last one standing if the opponent releases his professional skills. At this time, Teacher Li saw Song Ji becoming more and more outrageous, and shouted coldly, Song Ji, if you continue to say something that disrupts unity, I will report it to the school leaders and cancel your qualification for the trial in a month. After hearing what Teacher Li said, Song Ji, who was about to refute, suddenly became like a deflated ball. He just looked at Shen Xingyan with an angry expression but dared not speak. Although they will be quasi-graduates after awakening and the school will no longer have any control over them, the graduation test in a month is a real graduation benefit and he cannot afford to miss it. During the trial, not only can you see the real world outside the border, but the risk is almost zero. It is an exploration journey under the protection of many high-level combat professions in the school. If you are lucky, it is very likely that you will get rare items that can enhance various physical abilities. So after hearing what Teacher Li said, Song Ji, who was a little proud of his profession as a warrior, had to obey and shut his mouth. Chapter 4. Seeing that Song Ji had shut up obediently, Teacher Li stopped paying attention to him and followed the procedure to ask and record Shen Xingyan and Chu Wei about the results of their awakening. Shen Xingyan was about to tell his occupation. Although the profession of farmer did make him feel a huge gap in his heart, he still had to face what was coming, and he had already made up his mind for it. However, Chu Wei answered first. She said loudly, Teacher Li, I have awakened a fire mage. Except for strength and constitution, which are both slightly weaker attributes, all other attributes are full. As Chu Wei spoke, she glanced at Song Ji who was standing aside without leaving any trace. She clenched her small fist into a fist and waved at the other party. In the early stages of awakening, because mages are ranged casters, they naturally restrain melee professions such as warriors. Therefore, the meaning of Chu Wei's action is very obvious, and it is full of threat to Song Ji. When Song Ji heard that the other party was actually a mage, and a fire-type mage with explosive damage, he immediately wilted and began to regret his rash behavior. He wondered why he was so complacent as to provoke this girl. With Chu Wei's affluent family conditions and the blessing of such a top career, she will definitely grow much faster than himself in the future. If he provokes her now, he will inevitably end up getting beaten up in the future. He had been feeling dissatisfied with Teacher Li's reprimand, but he immediately lost his temper and slowly and quietly retreated without letting anyone notice. After hearing about Chu Wei's profession and physical attributes, the other students who were standing a little further away couldn't help but show envy on their faces, but then they thought of their own professions and could only smile bitterly. Teacher Li smiled and nodded when he heard this. Fire mage is considered a top profession in their school. With the existence of this profession, their class is not at the bottom and is not inferior to students from previous years. So what are the innate skills? Teacher Li's tone became much softer. Looking at this lively girl in red, his face was full of smiles. Teachers like good students. This is a tradition since ancient times, and Teacher Li is no exception. Fire mastery can increase the power of fire spells by 20%. After hearing Chu Wei's answer, Teacher Li quickly recorded it in the booklet. It was within his expectation that Chu Wei had such a talent. After all, the awakening of talent is usually in line with the profession, and this talent is very suitable for a fire mage. However, after Chu Wei finished speaking loudly, she immediately moved closer to Teacher Li and whispered, "Teacher Li, can you please register Shen Xingyan's professional information in private later?" Please. As Chu Wei spoke, she clasped her small hands together at an angle that no one else could see, and looked at Teacher Li with a pleading look in her eyes. Hearing Chu Wei's request, Teacher Li subconsciously looked at Shen Xingyan, frowned slightly, and vaguely guessed something in his heart, and seemed to be hesitant to speak. Looking at Chu Wei who had already awakened the mage profession in front of him, Teacher Li finally sighed helplessly and nodded slightly. Chu Wei's attitude has already shown that Shen Xingyan may have awakened to a more ordinary life profession than blacksmith. If this is true, out of the boy's self-esteem, there is really no need for him to ask in public. Seeing that Teacher Li agreed to her request, Chu Wei turned to look at Shen Xingyan and winked playfully. Shen Xingyan also smiled helplessly and didn't say much. He was naturally aware of the good intentions of his desk mate. After a period of self-adjustment, he has completely accepted the reality. Since he is destined to be a farmer, he has no choice but to continue along this path. At the moment of awakening, he seemed to have grown up a lot in an instant. He was a little precocious because he had shouldered the burden of the family too early, but now he has become more stable and no longer cares about others as much as before. After all the self-guidance along the way, Shen Xingyan's mind has become much more open. No matter how glorious the past was, it is only a thing of the past, and people still have to look forward. Live your own life well, take good care of your sister, strive to save some money when you are old, then exchange some attribute points to go out of the world, and do your best to go to that battlefield to fulfill your last wish of destroying the disaster. Everyone continued to wait for a while until all the people in the North District were gathered, and then they set out on their return journey. With the advent of the energy age, the old means of transportation have been gradually phased out and replaced by new transportation machinery powered by energy. People who awaken to the profession of equipment refining can use their professional skills to transform old machinery to make it perform far better than before. High-level professionals can also create new machines. With the existence of professional bonuses, the success rate of their creations is also increased. Often some small inventions can greatly improve the convenience of life of the people in the base. If it were in the peaceful times of the past, the weapon refining profession would have been a popular profession, second only to the combat profession. Unfortunately, in this era dominated by combat, although refining equipment has a certain effect, it is ultimately limited. Unless those high-level refiners can develop items that have a certain deterrent effect on disasters, low-level professionals will have little effect. Riding on the modified car returning to the North District, Teacher Li deliberately sat next to Shen Xingyan and Chu Wei, and asked Shen Xingyan about his awakened profession in a voice that only the two of them could hear, and recorded it. He would report the results to the school when he returned this time. Upon hearing this, Shen Xingyan answered Teacher Li's question bluntly. When he said the 4 words farmer's profession, his words were full of calmness, making people feel that he had completely accepted his fate at this time. When Teacher Li heard Shen Xingyan's answer, he thought, as expected, the profession that Shen Xingyan awakened to is really hard to accept. I am really sorry for this child's efforts over the years. Although he felt very sorry, as a teacher he had no choice. After all, awakening is not like the college entrance examinations in the past. If you don't do well in the exam, you can still find a way to get another chance to review. Awakening is an irreversible process. Teacher Li patted Shen Xingyan's shoulder soothingly and then put away the record book. According to regulations, other information of those working in the living profession does not need to be recorded. Firstly, it is for the children's self-esteem, and secondly, living professions do not require them to be intensively cultivated, so the information does not need to be recorded in excessive detail. Teacher Li recalled those hard-working children before, some of whom had smooth sailing, awakened to a career with unlimited potential, and finally found their own place in this era. Some are like Shen Xingyan, who awakened a life profession and then became like everyone else. This made him sigh at the ruling ability of fate, the operator, which was so terrifying. Chapter 5. As the vehicle sped forward, Shen Xingyan and others returned to the school in the northern district soon. Compared with the prosperity of the central district, the school at this time seemed a little desolate. The school leaders looked at the new batch of combat professionals with smiles on their faces, with no intention of stopping at all. The number of people who awakened to combat professions this time is obviously higher than the previous one, which is a good sign for their north district. There are also several promising talents like Chu Wei who have awakened top-level professions. This will provide them with a new group of living forces to resist disasters in the future, making them feel full of hope. As for the majority of professional life workers, they did not ignore them, but gave them full encouragement. I hope that they can improve their professional level in the future and make their own contribution to the construction of the future base. After the school leaders' speeches, these newly awakened children also raised their fighting spirits and were eager to appear in the Star Source world right now to improve themselves. Finally, after the school determined the time for organizing the trial, Shen Xingyan and his class were already one step away from graduation, and only had to wait for the trial to officially confirm the date. After saying goodbye to a few teachers with whom they had a good relationship, Shen Xingyan and Chu Wei walked out of the school together and left the place they had been familiar with for more than 10 years. After leaving the school gate, the two looked back at this place together, feeling a sense of emotion in their hearts. How much sweat and tears had been shed here. After this farewell, they were afraid that when they came back, the scene would be completely different. Shen Xingyan, we'll see each other in the trial in a month. During this time, I think I need to improve my career level in Xingyuan, and then ask my family to pay some money to exchange it for use in the trial. Just wait and see, I'll protect you from now on. Chu Wei suppressed the sadness in her heart and pretended to be happy when speaking, but her red eyes truly expressed her true feelings. Upon hearing this, Shen Xingyan looked at his desk mate with whom he had been together for many years. He knew very well that after graduation, due to the gap in their careers, the number of times they would see each other again would become very few. The two of them are like two intersecting lines. After a brief intersection, they will eventually drift apart. The realm she will reach in the future will be something he cannot even imagine. Shen Xingyan subconsciously wanted to touch Chu Wei's hair, but when his hand was halfway extended, he stopped abruptly, patted the other's shoulder, and said softly, "Work hard to improve yourself. We will have to rely on you for protection in the future. Don't let your guard down. See you in a month." After saying this, he smiled gently, waved goodbye, and then walked to the left. This road led to a barren area close to the border. Looking at Shen Xingyan's departing back, Chu Wei waved her arms vigorously and said loudly, "See you in a month." Shen Xingyan turned his back to Chu Wei, stretched out his right hand and waved it twice, then resolutely set foot on the road he had traveled back and forth countless times. Along the way, Shen Xingyan was trying hard to memorize every tree and blade of grass on the road, hoping to use this to distract himself from the sadness of parting. When he got home and looked at the small home he shared with his sister, Shen Xingyan calmed down, put on a cheerful smile and walked in. At this time, his sister Shen Xingyan had been waiting at home for a long time. Today is the day when Shen Xingyan and his class awaken, so the whole school has a rare day off. Shen Xingyan, who has been well behaved and sensible since childhood, has been praying that her brother can awaken to a good profession. As her younger sister, she had seen how hard Shen Xingyan trained. Every time the school organized a competition, he would practice extra privately for the prize money, just to make their lives a little better. Awakening a good profession would not only allow them to no longer rely on the base's rescue as their main source of income, but would also allow them to go beyond the borders in the future and avenge their parents, whom they only had a vague impression of. This had always been the wish of their brother. Hearing the sound of the range detector at this time, Shen Xingyan immediately ran to the window, looked through the thick glass, and saw that it was his brother who came back. He quickly trotted to open the door, rushed over with excitement, and then threw himself into Shen Xingyan's arms. Shen Xingyan raised her head with a bright smile and looked up at her brother, and asked with a little excitement, "Brother, how is it? What profession did you awaken today?" Shen Xingyan, who had long anticipated his sister's question, remained silent until he brought his sister back into the house, then he frankly told her about his farmer profession. By the way, he showed his black card that was generated when he awakened to his sister. For so many years, the two of them had been barely getting by relying on the relief from the base, and the prize money they won in the competition was also exchanged for various materials because they had no place to save the money. Now that they have this black card, it can be regarded as a sign that their small family has officially started to manage their own life. Shen Xingyan, who was already 13 years old, had already understood the pros and cons of various professions. When she heard that her brother had awakened the worst profession, the farmer, she looked at the black card in her hand shining with a mysterious pattern, and was disappointed. She quickly hugged Shen Xingyan to comfort him, "Brother, it's okay. In 5 years, it will be my turn to awaken. By then, I will awaken a top-level combat profession, kill disasters and make a lot of money. Our lives will get better and better." Shen Xingyan looked at his sister's confident look and couldn't help but smile warmly. He patted his sister's head gently and said with a smile, "Don't worry, your brother is not that squeamish. Although he is a farmer, he is more than enough to take care of our daily expenses. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. When I make money, I'll exchange it for some top-quality ingredients for you, so you don't have to work too hard." Shen Xingyan nodded vigorously upon hearing this, but she made up her mind to train harder than ever before and earn more prize money from the competition to share the pressure with her brother. Seeing his sister nodding obediently and cutely, with an affirmative look on her little face, Shen Xingyan smiled and went to the kitchen to cook some food for the two of them. Watching his brother cooking skillfully in the kitchen, Shen Xingyan returned to his room and began to practice the set of physical exercises taught in school. The ingredients and food in the kitchen are all aid provided by the base. Now that Shen Xingyan is 18 years old, this aid will be cancelled. He must enter the Xingyan world as soon as possible to grow crops. After the two finished their meal, Shen Xingyan went straight back to the room, lay on the bed and placed the black card on his forehead. With a slight movement of his mind, his consciousness automatically entered the world of Xingyan through the black card. Chapter 6. Lying on the familiar bed, Shen Xingyan felt his eyes suddenly darken, followed by a strange feeling of detachment. This power seemed to take him across the barriers of time and space. The bizarre scene made Shen Xingyan dizzy and he subconsciously closed his eyes. After a brief period of darkness, Shen Xingyan felt himself stepping on a solid floor. It took him a while to come back to his senses and gently opened his tightly closed eyes. However, when he opened his eyes, everything around him became clear, colorful pictures came before his eyes, and beautiful scenes like a painting appeared in front of him, making him feel as if he was in a fantasy world. Seeing this kind of scene for the first time, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but exclaim, "Are there such places in the outside world?" After Shen Xingyan sighed, he found himself on a huge platform, standing in the middle of the platform. Shen Xingyan looked around and found that there was a layer of fog on the edge of the platform, making it difficult to see the scenery outside. In front of him, there stood several tall professional figures, dressed in gorgeous equipment and exuding a powerful aura. There is a line of introduction below each professional image, which introduces the characteristics and skills of the profession. Shen Xingyan read the introductions carefully, even though he had already learned this knowledge in school. But it was the first time that he saw the final images of these professions so intuitively, and the combination made them feel more vivid. As he looked at them one by one, a look of envy swept over those combat professions one by one, and he stopped when he finally walked in front of the old man with ordinary looks and a sense of vicissitudes of life. Shen Xingyan looked at the old man in front of him, his clear eyes emitting a kind of sincerity. Different from people in other professions who are dressed gorgeously and have noble temperament, this old man who is a farmer is so ordinary that people feel that he is just an ordinary old man. His face was covered with deep wrinkles, and every tiny wrinkle on his body was deepened against his dark skin. He was wearing loose clothes and a coarse cloth belt around his waist. His feet were wearing a pair of worn-out cloth shoes that were very worn out. It was obvious that they had accompanied the old man for quite a long time. At the same time, the old man's hands covered with calluses seemed to be telling the younger generations that the hardships of the farmer's career are not just talk. The overall image that the old man gives people is full of hardships and difficulties, which does not arouse any desire to envy and worship him. Shen Xingyan looked at the old man and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. No wonder this profession was so criticized. Just such an image seemed to tell them that their final destination was nothing more than a haggard old man. 18 years old is an age full of hope, but they are given such a destined outcome, which makes it hard not to be defensive. But Shen Xingyan is different. It may be that they sympathize with each other as farmers, or it may be that he has been precocious since childhood and has finally accepted the fact that he is a farmer through constant self-guidance. At this moment, when he looked at the thin old grandfather, he not only did not feel the slightest bit of disgust in his heart, but instead felt a sense of intimacy. The emergence of this feeling made him look at the old grandfather's face in front of him and feel even more kind and friendly, as if he had seen his own relative. Facing this old man who had been standing here for who knows how many years, Shen Xingyan slowly developed a sense of respect, and then he couldn't help but bow to the old man, as if he was bowing to an elder, or as if he was bowing to his old self. But in the moment when he bowed down, he did not notice that the old man's appearance suddenly became lively. The wrinkled cheeks were now emitting a strange glow. The old man looked at Shen Xingyan with eyes full of relief. As a strange light appeared from the old man and quietly entered Shen Xingyan's brow, the old man returned to his previous appearance. Shen Xingyan raised his head, but did not notice anything unusual. At this moment, a mysterious voice sounded in his ears, "Welcome to the Star Source world, young professional. There are countless challenges and opportunities waiting for you here. Get close to your career statue and start your career journey." Shen Xingyan was not unfamiliar with this sudden sound. Everyone in school had mentioned it before. After entering the Xingyan world, this kind of reminder sound would be heard from time to time. There was no need to make a fuss. Some people have awakened to the life profession before, but they delusionally want to stand next to the combat profession at this time. The result was predictable. Nothing unusual happened. Instead, because of his wrong choice, he was expelled from the world of Star Source and was forbidden to enter again within 30 days. Shen Xingyan took a deep breath and approached the old man in front of him with a firm gaze. As he made his choice, a ray of light shot out from the professional image and enveloped Shen Xingyan's body. Career selection successful. Please set your name in the Xingyan world. Please make a careful decision. This name will accompany you through countless days and nights in Xingyan. Shen Xingyan thought about it for a moment, and then remembered the words of a great leader in ancient times, "A single spark can start a prairie fire." The decision was made immediately, name it, spark starting a prairie fire. Name set successfully, reading your personal information, please wait. Then Shen Xingyan's personal information appeared in front of me, name, Shen Xingyan No 1181204331-9527 Occupation, farmer professional skills, 1 Consume a certain amount of energy points to increase the growth rate of crops within a specified range by 10%. The larger the range, the more energy points are consumed. The interval is 10 hours and the skill cooldown is 24 hours. Strength, 10 points agility, 10 points constitution, 10 points spirit, 10 points HP, 100/100 points rating, 18/18 points physical strength, 10/10 points physical attack, 10 points spell attack, 10 points defense, 10 points speed, 10 points talent, summon skeleton, summon a skeleton monster with all attributes of 1 to fight, cooling time 24 hours. Money, 0 gold 0 silver 0 bronze. Read successfully, setting unique association. Settings completed. Do you want to enter the world of Xing Yuan? Enter. Shen Xingyan nodded and said. Shen Xingyan, who had read his information many times, did not find that the attributes in front of him were different from before. And with Shen Xingyan's choice, the scene in front of his eyes changed again in an instant. The previously quiet platform disappeared, replaced by a shabby little village and a noisy clamor around it. Chapter 7. Another bunch of small fry have come in. It seems like more and more people have awakened to combat professions recently. I've seen quite a few just from my own experience. That's right. Just now I saw a bunch of people in the area with the first level monsters, beating up the rabbits. The rabbits were really weak. Haha, weren't we like this back then? I really miss the energy of our youth. Shen Xingyan was wearing a set of virtual clothes at this time. When he looked around, he saw that the street was crowded with all kinds of humans wearing strange equipment. It was obvious at a glance that they were all humans who had experienced battles, and they all exuded a fierce aura. The combat profession, which seems rare in the outside world, can be seen everywhere in this small village. This sense of disparity makes Shen Xingyan feel like Granny Lu entering the Grand View Garden, overwhelmed. The sounds of hawking from street vendors, shouting from teams, and all kinds of discussions came one after another, making the street particularly lively. Is this the normal way people should have been long ago when there was no external pressure? What a relaxing feeling. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but sigh. Thinking that they are in the outside world, they may be attacked by disasters at any time, so apart from training and going out to buy daily necessities, people spend most of their time in heavily defended rooms, and subconsciously feel a sense of security. This kind of scene only occasionally appears in the central area and its surrounding areas, but the atmosphere is not so relaxed and comfortable. Shen Xingyan thought, no wonder those who have awakened their professions like to stay here all day. First of all, they can really improve their professional level and earn the money they need to improve their real strength. Secondly, it should be this relaxed atmosphere that allows them to temporarily forget the ubiquitous pressure from the outside world. Shaking his head gently, Shen Xingyan checked his inventory. With a thought, an inventory of 36 grids appeared before his eyes. The empty grids made the entire inventory look particularly desolate. Only in the first 3 grids are there the necessary items for novices in the Star Wish world, namely a pair of coarse cloth pants, a linen shirt, and a hoe. Item, rough linen pants. Attributes, no level requirements, no attribute bonus, no durability limit, with basic cold proof and warming effects, a must-have pair of pants for novices in the farmer profession. Item, rough linen shirt. Attributes, no level requirements, no attribute bonus, no durability limit, has basic cold proof and warming effects, a must-have top for novices in the farmer profession. Item, hoe. Attribute, physical attack +1. No level requirement, no durability limit, an essential tool for the farmer profession. Shen Xingyan looked at the properties of this professional 3-piece suit and couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. Such properties were really different from what was in the books, and it was completely worthy of the title of essential equipment for novices. All he needs now is a straw hat to complete his farmer image. However, Shen Xingyan also discovered one advantage of the novice equipment, that is, there is no durability limit. As long as he keeps wearing this outfit in the future, he doesn't need to go to a tailor or a blacksmith to repair the durability, which saves a lot of money. After looking at the equipment, Shen Xingyan then turned his gaze to the lower right corner of the inventory, the magical wallet that could circulate normally in reality. At this time, the words 10 copper coins are displayed on it, which is also one of the basic equipment that Xing Yuan provides to newcomers. After all, professional activities in the Star Source world require physical energy. This money allows novices who have no economic foundation to buy food to replenish their physical strength when they are lacking in physical strength. It will not let your physical strength fall below 3 points, thus causing you to fall into a weak state. The positions of the silver coins and gold coins were naturally displayed with a big 0 in a colorful and bold font, as if mocking Shen Xingyan and making him want to destroy it. Through several times of learning at school, Shen Xingyan learned that the conversion relationship between gold coins, silver coins, and copper coins is 1:1000. The value of 1 copper coin, according to what is taught in school, should be equivalent to 10 cents before the atomic explosion. These 10 copper coins are equivalent to 1 yuan before. Similarly, 1 silver coin is equivalent to 100 yuan. 1 gold coin is indeed quite a lot, equivalent to as much as 100,000 yuan before. Shen Xingyan wants to eliminate these zeros by relying on his profession as a farmer, but he still has a long way to go. After checking these, Shen Xingyan moved his mind and immediately appeared in his own career space. Congratulations! This is your first time entering the farmer's professional space. I'll give you a bag of wheat seeds as a reward. As soon as he entered the career space, Shen Xingyan heard this prompt. He subconsciously opened his inventory and saw that the wheat seeds rewarded in the prompt had appeared in the 4th grid of the inventory. As his mind went, the properties of the wheat seeds also appeared in front of Shen Xingyan. Item, wheat seeds. Attributes, maturity period is 10 days, and the planting area is 600 square meters. Seeing the properties of the seed, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but sigh that the Xing Yuan world was quite considerate. It took into account almost all the items a newcomer would need. Now he has been fully equipped with clothes, tools, and seeds, and all he needs to do is start working himself. Although considerate, the value of these items is too low, making the energy world seem a little too stingy. Shen Xingyan shifted his gaze slightly and looked around at the space that belonged to him, and a sense of security arose in his heart. Every life profession has such a professional space of his own. This is also a unique feature of life professions in the world of Xingyuan compared to combat professions. Shen Xingyan and other life professionals can obtain corresponding professional experience points by displaying their professional skills and reaping their professional achievements in the professional space, so as to achieve the goal of upgrading their professional level. At the same time, the professional achievements gained can be sold to Xingyuan shopping mall or traded privately with others to obtain Xingyuan's most important resource, money. Combat professions do not have the function of career space. After accepting various tasks, they only need to go to the wild or dungeon to kill monsters, upgrade, and obtain spoils. Of course, combat professionals make money much faster than Shen Xingyan and other life professionals. After all, the gains from plundering are always greater than those from creation. Shen Xingyan looked at the small piece of land in his professional space, estimating that it was about 1 acre in size. Although it didn't look big, it was enough for him to be busy for a whole day. As the saying goes, if you have food in your hands, you will not be worried. With this space, Shen Xingyan feels that he and his sister will never go hungry again. Chapter 8. The illusory clothes on Shen Xingyan's body were slowly disappearing. This was the time when the privilege granted by Xingyuan to the newcomer was about to come. In order to prevent newcomers from passively becoming exhibitionists, Xingyuan will give newcomers a certain amount of time to experience dressing up, so that they have time to get familiar with the various functions of Xingyuan without being overly noticed. Shen Xingyan also noticed this change, and quickly equipped himself with the 3-piece set of rookie equipment in the inventory to prevent himself from being judged as an exhibitionist by the Xingyuan world. The 3-piece set for new players occupies the weapon slot, top slot, and bottom slot in the equipment bar respectively. Each equipment slot can only have one piece of equipment and cannot be stacked in the same position. Shen Xingyan looked at the huge equipment bar, which only contained these 3 items. As he was short of money, he quickly closed the equipment bar page and didn't look at it anymore. After putting on the 3-piece set of new equipment, Shen Xingyan's professional farmer vibe immediately emerged. He looked himself up and down, then nodded slightly, and was quite satisfied with this outfit. The only drawback was that his feet were now empty and were firmly on the ground, which made him, who had always worn shoes, feel a little uncomfortable for a while. But then he thought, didn't farmers working in the fields a long time ago also not wear shoes? He didn't care so much. He gently touched the coarse cloth and felt it was acceptable. After all, no matter how real the world of Xingyuan was, he only came in through his spiritual consciousness, and his physical perception was indeed not as real as in reality. After stretching a little, Shen Xingyan looked at the suit and thought, I'm afraid I'll have to wear this suit for a long time. Taking the hoe in his hand and looking at the land in front of him, Shen Xingyan was about to start sowing wheat seeds when he suddenly thought of his innate skill. He could summon a skeleton with all attributes of one to fight. His mind suddenly became active. Since the summoned skeletons were not able to fight on the spot, could he let the skeletons help him farm? After all, if we force an explanation for farming, it can also be understood as the combat of the farmer's profession. If this is really possible, then my planting efficiency should be greatly improved. With this in mind, Shen Xingyan silently recited the innate skill of summoning skeletons in his heart, and very naturally began to chant a strange musical note whose meaning he did not know. As he sang softly, the ground in front of him began to shake slightly, and a bony head slowly emerged from the soil. If other uninformed people saw this situation, they would definitely step back subconsciously and feel panic in their hearts. But Shen Xingyan did not feel strange. After all, it was something he had expected. It was just that this way of appearance made him feel a little down to earth. Then Shen Xingyan continued to chant unknown notes, and the skeleton in front of him gradually appeared. Until he finished chanting, the entire appearance of the skeleton was completely presented in front of him. Looking at the slightly short skeleton in front of him, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but slap his forehead. He didn't expect to see such a small skeleton. The skeleton in front of me is probably the size of a 6 or 7-year-old child. It can be said to be a child laborer among skeletons. Not only that, the bones all over his body had lost their luster at all, and some places were even severely damaged, as if they would fall apart at any time. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but sigh in his heart when he saw this scene. If such a skeleton was brought to the battlefield, he would have been laughed at and socially dead by the human race before he was killed by the disaster. Shaking his head slightly, Shen Xingyan checked the basic properties of the skeleton. Name, little skeleton, can be named. Owner, Shen Xingyan. Race, undead. Skills, none. Strength, 1 point. Agility, 1 point. Constitution, 1 point. Spirit, 1 point. HP, 10/10 points, 1 HP is restored every 10 hours, physical attack, 1 point. Spell attack, 1 point. Defense, 1 point. Speed, 1 point. Note, can perform various combat actions according to the summoner's instructions. Looking at the attribute values a euro that were all 1 point, even though Shen Xingyan had expected it in his mind, he still felt frustrated when he saw it. With such attributes, it is still allowed to perform combat actions. I really don't know what the concept of attribute 1 is in this remark information. After a little complaint, Shen Xingyan calmed down, took out the bag of seeds from the inventory, and walked towards the field with a hoe on his shoulder. Looking back at the little skeleton still standing there, Shen Xingyan did not speak directly, but connected his mind to the little skeleton and asked it to follow him. He knew this ability naturally when he summoned the little skeleton, and there was no need to deliberately explore the method. After receiving the message, the little skeleton did not hesitate at all and immediately followed Shen Xingyan, but his movements were a little slow, which was a common problem for skeletons. After arriving at the field, Shen Xingyan used a hoe to dig a small hole in the ground, signaled to the little skeleton to record his movements, and then took out a seed and placed it in the dug hole. After the little skeleton recorded these actions, Shen Xingyan handed over all the seeds and started to dig the second small hole, then signaled the little skeleton to put the seeds in. The little skeleton paused for a moment and stood there in a daze. Shen Xingyan thought that this idea would not work and was about to take back the bag of seeds in the skeleton's hand and continue sowing. At this moment, the little skeleton suddenly moved, picked up a seed with precise finger bones, and threw it into the small pit imitating Shen Xingyan's movements. Seeing the little skeleton's movements were smooth despite some stumbling, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but clench his fists and celebrate. In the future, if two laborers work together to farm the land, the efficiency will definitely not be comparable to that of one person. Not only will it be much easier for me in the future. At the same time, there is more time for farming, which allows for fine-grained planting and greatly increases the yield of this land. From this perspective, my innate skill is quite useful and not a useless skill at all. Shen Xingyan was secretly excited. Although such an improvement was nothing to those who had capital, for Shen Xingyan who was already at a low point and had his own goals, any slight improvement was something worth celebrating. After being excited, Shen Xingyan began to cooperate with the little skeleton in the same way, and planted the entire field bit by bit. The planting task that Shen Xingyan estimated would take 2 or 3 hours to complete by himself was completed in just over an hour with the cooperation of the little skeleton, which greatly improved the efficiency. Congratulations, you have completed your first planting. You will be rewarded with a well. Please set the location. Shen Xingyan was also aware of this reward. After glancing around, he chose the spot right in the center of the field to facilitate future irrigation of the field. Chapter 9. After Shen Xingyan set the location of the well, the prompt from Xingyuan world appeared again, settings completed, please irrigate the fields to help the seeds grow better. As he had learned before, the star source world seemed to be teaching him how to plant crops step by step in this way, similar to the guidance for a novice. As the prompt sound ended, a well as high as Shen Xingyan's knee appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the 1-acre field. Following the prompt, Shen Xingyan and the little skeleton walked to the central area and looked at the well that had just been rewarded. The style of this well was not much different from what Shen Xingyan had in mind, but when he got closer he discovered that it was fundamentally different. In reality, well water is hundreds of meters underground and can only be obtained through pumping equipment or primitive buckets. But the water in the well in front of Shen Xingyan was indeed full, giving him a feeling that it was about to overflow. At this water level, water can be easily obtained without expending much effort, which will greatly increase his irrigation efficiency. Xingyuan is quite considerate. This saves me a lot of effort. Shen Xingyan said to himself with satisfaction. Then, without any hesitation, they picked up several buckets that appeared beside the well. One man and one skeleton began to draw water from the well, and watered the nearly 1 acre of land little by little. The magical thing is that the water in the well did not drop at all due to their actions, and it was still as full as it was at the beginning. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but sigh, it was worthy of being given by Xingyuan. The well was actually like a 3-piece set for a novice, so economical and practical, he wouldn't have to worry about the water for planting in the future. At Shen Xingyan's signal, the little skeleton was also watering the plants. Although his movements were slow, he was truly carrying out Shen Xingyan's orders. It is like a tireless machine, faithfully executing the program set by its creator. During the entire irrigation period, the little skeleton watered at the same frequency and did not show any signs of exhaustion due to multiple operations. Yes, there is no column for physical strength in his attributes, so he won't have any physical strength problems at all. This advantage will be of great help to my future farming. Shen Xingyan was a little surprised by this discovery. After all, taking care of farmland is a very tedious task. After irrigation, when the seeds grow, a series of maintenance tasks need to be done, such as fertilizing, weeding, and catching insects. These things do take quite a while, and now with this tireless little skeleton helping him, he will naturally feel much more relaxed. Looking at the little skeleton that would not stop at all, Shen Xingyan's expression of satisfaction was almost overflowing, thinking, it is clearly stated in my talent skill that after a 24-hour cooldown, I can summon a skeleton. That proves that I will have the help of the skeletons every day. As long as I finish the work that can be done before the skeletons disappear, I will have a lot more free time. Thinking of this, Shen Xingyan suddenly felt happy. Working with the little skeleton could greatly shorten his working hours. Compared with other farmers, this was a big advantage. Shen Xingyan looked at the little skeleton who was still working diligently while he was daydreaming. The way he staggered with the bucket of water made him feel that the skeleton was somewhat cute. This was probably a manifestation of loving someone and loving their dog. If other people knew that Shen Xingyan actually found a skeleton made up of a pile of bones cute, they would probably look at him strangely and sigh that the world is so big and there are all kinds of weird things. Irrigation is complete. I will give you a novice walking stick as a reward. Please use it to display your professional skills and speed up the growth of crops. When Shen Xingyan and the little skeleton finished irrigating the acre of land, the reminder sound of Xingyuan appeared in Shen Xingyan's ears. Hearing that Xingyuan had given a reward, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but check his inventory. He saw that there was only a hoe in the inventory, but now there was a stick-like object quietly placed in the second slot. He checked its properties with a thought, item, novice's cane attribute, spell attack +1 a tool with no level requirements and no durability limit for performing professional skills. Another good thing with no durability. Shen Xingyan quickly equipped it to the weapon column, and the novice cane immediately appeared in his hand. Shen Xingyan played with this real weapon for a while and couldn't help but think of Chu Wei. She awakened to the mage profession. If she released the professional skills through this weapon, what kind of power would it be? After thinking about the scene of a fireball destroying a disaster, Shen Xingyan began to follow the instructions in the prompt sound, stood in the middle of the field, and silently recited to release his professional skills. As a result of this thought, the energy in his body that he could not normally perceive began to move noticeably within his body. This feeling made Shen Xingyan, who was experiencing it for the first time, feel excited. He had seen the wonder of energy countless times in textbooks and in his teacher's demonstrations, and had already developed a deep yearning for it in his heart. Now he can also use this power. Although he is only displaying the skills of a farmer, it does not hinder his excitement. As the energy slowly gathered on the cane in Shen Xingyan's hand, he lightly tapped the ground, and suddenly an invisible aura began to spread in the surrounding 600 square meters. The appearance of this breath made the little skeleton beside him instinctively step back. As an undead creature, it instinctively felt a resistance to this breath of life. Although he was somewhat resistant, he stopped and stayed quietly aside after realizing that he had not caused any substantial harm to it. After releasing the professional skills, Shen Xingyan did not look at the situation in the fields, but carefully felt the feeling of releasing the skills just now. After all, in his opinion, professional skills only increase the growth rate of crops. Although the growth of the newly planted seeds is accelerated by 10%, there is no visible effect on the surface. However, what he didn't expect was that before he could finish feeling the trajectory of the energy, his vision was invaded by the rapidly appearing green around him. As soon as he used his professional skills, the seeds that had just been planted grew upwards like onions in dry land, as if the accelerator was turned on, and soon reached a height above the knees, and only stopped growing at this time. Chapter 10. Congratulations, you have successfully used your professional skills. Farmer Professional Experience Points +1. If you successfully perform your professional skills, you will be rewarded with a sickle. When the crops are ripe, you can harvest them. 2 consecutive prompt sounds from the star source appeared in Shen Xingyan's ears, but he seemed to have heard nothing at all, just standing there in a daze. What's going on? When did professional skills become so effective? Is a 10% increase in growth rate so exaggerated? Shen Xingyan looked at the scene in front of him in surprise. These questions began to pop up in his mind involuntarily, and his brain was a little frozen for a while. After waiting for a long while, Shen Xingyan came back to his senses, and then quickly opened the attribute panel to check the status of his professional skills. The properties column clearly shows, professional skills, 1 consume a certain amount of energy points to increase the growth rate of crops within a specified range by 10%. The larger the range, the more energy points are consumed. The interval is 10 hours and the skill cooldown is 24 hours. After Shen Xingyan read the introduction of the professional skills word by word, he easily found some differences from his own impression. Shen Xingyan was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth. How come the growth rate in his previous professional skills became the growth progress? And the time limit of 10 hours also became an interval of 10 hours? What is going on? Shen Xingyan thought he had discovered the reason, but this discovery made him even more confused. The growth rate becomes the growth progress. Although there is only one word difference in between them, the meanings contained in them are completely different. Taking wheat in the current 10-day growth cycle as an example, if the growth rate is increased by 10%, and the daily growth time is 10 hours, it is equivalent to 1 hour of acceleration time every day. If it's 10 days, it's just 10 hours, which is less than half a day. However, increasing the growth progress by 10% is completely different. As long as the skill is performed successfully, it is equivalent to gaining 1 day of acceleration time for wheat. Such an improvement is undoubtedly fundamentally different from the previous effect of less than a day. This alone is already a luxury for Shen Xingyan after awakening the farmer profession. But what's even more terrifying is that the 2 words time limit in the original skill description were actually replaced with interval. You know, his cooldown time is 24 hours now, and he has to wait 10 hours before releasing his skills. This has no effect on him now. This is obviously because the time limit of the professional skills has been cancelled, which is why such a spectacular scene just now appeared. Does that mean he can use his professional skill of plus 10% progress on the crop once a day? Doesn't that mean he will only need 10 days at most to make the crop mature, no matter how advanced it is? Thinking of this, Shen Xingyan suddenly became so excited that his lips began to tremble. Currently, because his professional level is still level 1, he can only plant level 1 seeds, and the performance of this skill has not been fully utilized. But if you wait until your profession level is upgraded in the future and you can plant more advanced seeds, the effect will be completely different. You have to know that high-quality seeds cannot mature in just 10 or 20 days like wheat. The duration could be as short as a few months or as long as several years. Only then will this professional skill really come into play. Just imagine that you have painstakingly taken care of the crops for a year or two, but Shen Xingyan successfully catches up in just 10 days. If this happened to anyone, they would go crazy. Shen Xingyan stared at the skill introduction with a dull look. The scenes in his mind had already extended to many years later. At that time, the value of any crops you planted would be comparable to the harvest of a day's hard work by a combat professional today. How exciting would that feel? As he imagined, his originally dull gaze became more and more lively, and the light in his eyes slowly turned into a scorching little sun, causing the little skeleton next to him to turn his head and look over. Shen Xingyan didn't dare to think any further and quickly took a deep breath, as if he was spitting out all the depression he had felt before, and as if he was forcing himself to calm down. Being carried away by success is a big taboo for people. Shen Xingyan kept repeating this sentence in his mind. After all, no matter how powerful you become in the future, that is a matter for the future. It is better for you to keep a low profile for now. You also need to keep the changes in your professional skills firmly in your mind and never tell anyone about it. Otherwise, in this world where force is respected, you never know what kind of treatment you will suffer. Years of life experience have taught Shen Xingyan that human nature is too unstable. Don't test it lightly. When you test it, you are doomed to fail miserably. Shen Xingyan calmed down, but still couldn't figure out why his skills had undergone such a sudden change. What was the root cause? However, after analyzing it over and over again, he still had no clue and he couldn't figure out the reason. In the end, he could only attribute it to his luck and the favor of the star source world. Putting aside the thoughts in his mind, Shen Xingyan remembered the 2 tips from Xingyan just now. Then he quickly checked his own attributes: name, Shen Xingyan No 11812041-9527. Occupation, farmer. Professional skills, 1. Consume a certain amount of energy points to increase the growth rate of crops within a specified range by 10%. The larger the range, the more energy points are consumed. The interval is 10 hours and the skill cooldown is 24 hours. Level, 1. Experience, 2/100 strength, 10 points agility, 10 points constitution, 10 points spirit, 10 points HP, 100/100 points original performance, 13/18 points physical strength, 10/10 points physical attack, 10 points spell attack, 10 points defense, 10 points speed, 10 points talent. Summon skeleton. Summon a skeleton monster with all attributes of 1 to fight, cooling time 24 hours, money, 0 gold 0 silver 10 bronze. Looking at the levels and experience bars that appeared in the attributes, Shen Xingyan had already expected something in his mind. Before coming here, he knew that this was unique to the Xingyan world, and that he could increase his career level by increasing his experience points, thereby achieving the goal of improving attributes. At this time, his experience value has reached 2 points, which is the initial 1 point plus the 1 point obtained from using the skill just now. Although the experience gained this time was small, it also opened up his path to upgrade. Then he checked the sickle in the inventory. Item, Scythe attribute, attack +1. No level requirement, no durability limit, an essential tool for the farmer profession. Seeing that the sickle's attributes still had no durability limit, he felt even happier. After realizing that he had great potential in future career, Shen Xingyan's personality became much more cheerful, and now he thinks everything is beautiful. Looking at the wheat seedlings in front of him, and the fields with many strong weeds appearing due to the strong effect of the skill, Shen Xingyan was still able to happily move together with the little skeleton and happily started the weeding operation. While pulling out weeds, he was humming an unknown tune. One could tell at first glance that this farmer was in a very good mood. He was not at all like other new farmers, who had sad faces as if others owed him money. Being able to pull out weeds on the first day of planting, Shen Xingyan is definitely the first person in history. However, such an achievement cannot be revealed to others. Only he knows it himself. He has to say, how lonely it is to be invincible, how lonely it is. Chapter 11. Little skeleton, although I don't know if it will be you that I summon next time, I still have to say thank you for today's work. Wang Hao gently stroked the little skeleton's smooth skull and said softly. The growth progress increased by 10%, combined with the normal growth progress of wheat, Shen Xingyan's wheat growth progress can reach 20% today alone. However, the workload that comes with it is commensurate with its growth progress. Today, there were so many reminders of the need for maintenance on the land that Shen Xingyan became a little numb. After all, in reality, wheat usually takes 6 or 7 months to reach maturity without human intervention. During this period, the tasks of catching insects, weeding, and irrigation will not seem so compact. But Shen Xingyan is now in the world of Xingyan, which is indeed quite different from Blue Star. Its progress is totally incomparable to the outside world. Just take the maturity period of wheat as an example. If you don't use professional skills, it only takes 10 days for it to mature and then be harvested and sold. The time of 6 or 7 months was compressed into just 10 days. The heavy maintenance workload can be imagined. However, Shen Xingyan's current situation is that the time was shortened by half in this already short time. One can imagine how intense the heavy maintenance work is. Sometimes Xingyan reminded us to catch insects, sometimes to pull out weeds, and sometimes to irrigate the plants. One reminder after another came, with no intention of stopping at all. Every time Shen Xingyan and the little skeleton finish a maintenance task, Xingyan will prompt that a new daily maintenance task has appeared. This series of operations requires each of them to have one skeleton to handle it. Even a full-value newcomer like Shen Xingyan feels his physical strength decreasing very quickly, which shows how heavy the workload is. This really proves the saying that hard work pays off. Fortunately, Xingyan gave him 10 copper coins. Shen Xingyan spent 2 copper coins to buy 2 steamed buns in the Xingyan shopping mall, which prevented his physical strength from entering the red line area. I heard that when planting high-level seeds in the future, fertilization maintenance work will be required, which will add another item to the daily maintenance work. It is true that farmers are hard workers. Fortunately, Shen Xingyan had the help of the little skeleton, so he was able to hold on. Although it was a bit reluctant, Shen Xingyan did not choose to give up, but still completed each of the prompt tasks seriously. After all, the lessons learned from past experiences reminded Shen Xingyan all the time that if he didn't work, he would have no money to spend and would have to continue to live a hard life. There are 2 reasons why Shen Xingyan kept working on it and did not choose to ignore Xingyuan's reminder. First, if no reminders are given for a long time, Xingyuan will increase the planting time of crops, so that wheat that originally takes 10 days to mature may take a month to mature. Secondly, there is the issue of final production. For people like Shen Xingyan, whenever there is a work prompt, they can solve it in a short time. The final output will be twice the usual amount, sometimes even more. The normal wheat yield per acre is about 300 to 1000 kilograms, and the final yield depends on the normal workload. Nearly 12 hours have passed since the start of planting. During this period, Shen Xingyan and the little skeleton only took occasional breaks, and most of the other time was spent completing various prompt tasks. Although Shen Xingyan is a little tired now, he can still hold on. After all, the longer he works, the greater the output will be in 5 days. This is a proportional relationship. But now Shen Xingyan's daily online time has reached its limit and he has to return to the real world. As a newcomer, Xingyuan only allows him to stay here for 12 hours a day. If he exceeds the time limit, he will be automatically driven out by Xingyuan. There are ways to increase the length of stay, which is to wait until you reach level 20, or to spend money to stay longer. At this time, Xingyuan had already given Shen Xingyan a hint that he was about to reach his time limit, and he had no choice but to return to reality. Looking at this little skeleton that had accompanied him for more than 10 hours, Shen Xingyan felt reluctant to let it go, but there was nothing he could do. Shen Xingyan feels very fortunate that it has not disappeared until now. This proves that every time he goes out for professional activities in the future, he will be accompanied by an obedient and hardworking little skeleton, and he will always have a farming efficiency that is half a level higher than that of humans. Although Shen Xingyan was a little reluctant, he had no choice. After I leave, you can do as much as you can based on these prompts. It sounds pretty desolate for a skeleton to stand here and wait to disappear. You should just continue working to distract yourself. After saying these words, Shen Xingyan thought about it carefully and suddenly felt something strange. He himself sensed something was wrong. The speech he had just made was just like those evil capitalists before the explosion of atomic energy. On the surface, he spoke high-sounding words, but the underlying meaning was to exploit this skeleton employee as much as possible. However, considering that the skeleton has no such thoughts and has no physical limitations, just like a robot, Shen Xingyan's inexplicable sense of guilt just arose and disappeared immediately. The reason why Shen Xingyan told the little skeleton to do the homework according to the prompts after he left was because Xingyuan would only notify him in his ear about some prompts that were rewarding in nature. But for some daily maintenance work, Xingyuan is humane and will place an icon above the wheat field to provide reminders. It is so visible to living professionals as long as they look up. If the corresponding maintenance work is not done for a long time, reminders will be given in the professional's ears and information bars. Shen Xingyan discovered that although the space where the little skeleton's eyes should be was empty, it could still see things in the outside world, including these prompt icons. After Shen Xingyan's guidance, the little skeleton now understands what it needs to do after each icon appears. Shen Xingyan looked at such an outstanding little skeleton and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. After waving goodbye to the little skeleton, he found the exit button and clicked it. Instantly Shen Xingyan's consciousness returned to the real world. After Shen Xingyan suddenly disappeared, the little skeleton stood there in a daze for a long time, seeing that his master had not returned yet. It turned around and looked at the field where the prompt icon appeared again, and then it carried out the last instructions given by its owner without hesitation and went to work according to the icon. Chapter 12. Shen Xingyan returned to the real world at this time. He woke up slowly and felt a little tired. He shook his swollen head. It was the first time that he was out of consciousness for such a long time, and he felt a little uncomfortable. Looking at the familiar ceiling, Shen Xingyan recalled everything that had just happened in Xingyuan, compared with the cold building in front of him and the reality of disasters in the outside world. The atmosphere was filled with ease and hope, and gave him the feeling that he was in a dream. Moreover, the surprise that the star source world gave him was indeed too big, which made him suddenly feel a little unreal when he returned to reality. Shen Xingyan's mind moved slightly, and he checked the black card still placed on his forehead. Name, Shen Xingyan No 1181204331-9527. Occupation, Farmer. Professional skills, 1. Consume a certain amount of energy points to increase the growth rate of crops within a specified range by 10%. The larger the range, the more energy points are consumed. The interval is 10 hours and the skill cooldown is 24 hours. Strength, 10 points. Agility, 10 points. Constitution, 10 points. Spirit, 10 points. HP, 100/100 points. Rating, 18/18 points. Physical strength, 4/10 points. Physical attack, 10 points. Spell attack, 10 points. Defense, 10 points. Speed, 10 points. Talent, summon skeleton. Summon a skeleton monster with all attributes of 1 to fight. Cooling time 24 hours. Money, 8 copper. Entrance to Xingyuan World. A 12-hour countdown. Looking at his professional skills, which were indeed the same as those in the Xingyuan World, Shen Xingyan's mood, which had been suppressed by the surrounding environment, suddenly calmed down. After looking at this information for a long time, Shen Xingyan knew that he was indeed different. The frustration he had felt when he was a newly awakened farmer now seemed to have become a small episode in his life, and he really liked this feeling of relief. It was already early in the morning. Tired and hungry, Shen Xingyan walked out of the room and moved lightly to the kitchen, fearing to disturb his sister's rest. After preparing breakfast for both of them, Shen Xingyan quickly finished his own portion and kept his sister's portion warm. Then he returned to the bedroom and fell into a deep sleep. At this time in the Xingyuan space, the maintenance work of the fields showed no signs of stopping because of Shen Xingyan's departure. The little skeleton is still tirelessly busy with the work arranged by Shen Xingyan, and is carrying out wheat maintenance work according to Xingyuan's instructions. Every time the little skeleton took a long time to complete a prompt, Xingyuan would pop up another prompt, leaving the little skeleton no time to rest. This is because the little skeleton has no physical strength limit and will loyally carry out Shen Xingyan's orders. Otherwise, if he summons any creature, he will be exhausted. At this time, the wheat in that acre of farmland had grown taller, and the little skeleton could no longer be seen working in it. At a sudden glance, he could hardly see it. The success of little skeleton's work was also very obvious. The wheat grew stronger and stronger, unlike other people's farmland, which was left unattended due to the farmer's return to reality, and became overgrown with weeds, insects running around, and drought and water shortage. It is foreseeable that when the wheat matures, with the same acre of land, others will be considered lucky if they can harvest 400 to 500 kilograms, but Shen Xingyan's small acre of land will at least produce twice as much as others. At this time, Shen Xingyan was naturally unaware of the changes that were taking place in his planting space. He was immersed in a beautiful dream, with a faint smile on his face from time to time. In the dream, he turned into a powerful being whose words could be fulfilled, flying in the air like the ruler of base number 6, and then with a light wave of his finger, he could destroy tens of thousands of disasters. He also resurrected his deceased parents, and the family strolled leisurely on the bustling street. However, this beautiful dream was shattered by a huge unknown disaster. Shen Xingyan sat up suddenly, tiny beads of sweat began to appear on his forehead due to the shock, and he was breathing heavily. Recalling the disaster in his dream that shattered his fantasy in one fell swoop, Shen Xingyan's palms clenched tightly involuntarily. As his emotions slowly calmed down, his body began to relax. He thought about how he had only awakened the farmer profession yesterday. Although the professional skills were very powerful, they would only show their power in the later stages. At this stage, he still needs to hide himself little by little and slowly accumulate strength. Shen Xingyan warned himself, although the days are long, one day, as a farmer, I can go beyond the boundaries and scare disasters away. Taking a deep breath, Shen Xingyan looked at the time and it was almost noon. My sister doesn't come back from school for lunch, so there is no need to prepare her lunch. Shen Xingyan was eating alone, so he made some food casually. The amount was just enough to satisfy his hunger, but he didn't dare to eat too much. After all, he is now an awakened person. According to the regulations of the base, once a professional appears in a family, they will automatically lose the qualification to receive free supplies. The resources of the base are also limited, and they cannot be allowed to collect them without limit. And now Shen Xingyan's family doesn't have much food stored, so he'd better save as much as possible and feed his younger sister first. After the wheat in his star source space matures and he sells it for money, he can then make other purchases or extract it directly from the star source world. The value paid for these two ways of obtaining materials is basically the same. In reality, it may be slightly lower, but the magnitude is not large. Taking 1 kilogram of wheat as an example, it costs 2 copper coins to sell it to Xingyuan shopping mall, but it takes 20 copper coins to extract it from Xingyuan in reality, which is a 1:10 ratio. In reality, buying 1 kilogram of wheat costs 19 copper coins, which is slightly cheaper. Now Shen Xingyan only has 8 copper coins on him, which is not enough to buy even a kilogram of wheat, so it is better to be frugal. After dinner, Shen Xingyan looked at the reminder on the star source card that it would take another 5 hours before he could re-enter the star world. He did not waste this time and began to train in the physical skills taught in school. When Shen Xingyan was in school, he felt that no matter how hard he practiced, he could not make any progress. Later, the teacher told them that this was the bottleneck period before awakening. As long as you complete the awakening, you can accumulate your strength and quickly improve your attributes in all aspects. At this time, Shen Xingyan also clearly felt that his body seemed to be just as the teacher said. Through these physical techniques, his awakened body was like a floodgate opened, madly releasing the emotions that had been suppressed for a long time. Chapter 13. After 5 hours of exercise, Shen Xingyan was a little tired, but he clearly felt the improvement in his physical fitness. The feeling of hard work paying off returned to him again. Although after checking the star source card, I found that none of the attributes had been increased, but that feeling was not wrong. I believed that with the accumulation of time, my efforts would always be reflected in the attributes. Seeing that the time to go to the Xingyuan world was almost up, Shen Xingyan hurriedly prepared dinner for him and his sister. After finishing his own portion and recovering some of his physical strength in reality, he left a note for his sister to reassure her. He then returned to his room. Seeing that there was still some time before he entered the star source world, he did not sit idle. He directly took out the information on various professions provided by the school, found the part about the farmer profession, and began to read it carefully. Although Shen Xingyan learned about every profession when he was in school, the depth of his understanding was different. Shen Xingyan, who is determined to go outside the world to kill disasters, has a much deeper understanding of the combat profession. For example, there are certain studies on how to match the various professions, what effects each combat profession will have at different stages, and at what distance it is most advantageous to perform. But correspondingly, the understanding of occupations in life is limited to some basic information, and no careful research has been done, especially for the occupations of farmers that are everywhere in the streets, and only a general idea is known. Now that he has awakened to the farmer profession and possesses very powerful professional skills, he naturally has to study the information in this area carefully and prepare for better development in the future. By reading information about agricultural careers, Shen Xingyan discovered that his current professional skills seemed to be unique and there had never been any record of this in the information. Basically, for all farmers, the awakened professional skills are the same as their previous ones, which is to increase the growth speed. And it only lasts for one day, so there is naturally no way to stack it. You can only rely on practicing it day by day to maintain the 10% growth rate. Very few farmers may awaken limited time skills such as farming efficiency or physical strength bonus, but there has never been a professional skill as bug-like as his. This discovery further strengthened Shen Xingyan's decision to hide himself well and develop in a low-key and steady manner. After learning some basic knowledge about agriculture, Shen Xingyan saw that the cooling time for entering the Xingyuan world had disappeared, and he quickly went back to his bed and lay down. He gently placed the star source card on his forehead, connected his consciousness to the star source card, and his eyes went dark as he entered the star source world again. With his consciousness leaving his body, Shen Xingyan once again returned to the Xingyuan world. But this time he did not appear on the huge platform like the first time, but appeared directly in his professional space. This is also common sense in the star source world. No matter where you return to, you will appear in the same place when you come back again. This time, Shen Xingyan felt much better when he returned to Xingyuan than the first time. Perhaps it was because he was mentally prepared in advance, or because of the experience from last time, his adaptability began to take effect, and he felt that this time he did not have the same trance-like feeling as last time. Feeling good, Shen Xingyan then looked at the wheat field which had taken on a completely different look, and nodded and smiled with satisfaction. Looking at the growth of the wheat flower and combining it with the knowledge he had just learned in the real world, Shen Xingyan dared to conclude that his acre of wheat would definitely give him a satisfactory harvest when it was harvested in the future. However, what surprised Shen Xingyan was that there was only one weeding icon above the wheat field at this time, and there were no multiple icons appearing at the same time as he had expected. By understanding the relevant information about the farmer's profession, he clearly knew that one of the important reasons why the final harvest of crops would fluctuate and appear unstable was mission stagnation. Task stagnation refers to the daily maintenance work released by the star source world, which has not been resolved for a long time. Depending on the prompts, it will have corresponding adverse effects on the farmland. For example, if there are too many weeds, they will occupy the nutrients of crops, resulting in insufficient nutrition and reduced yields. For example, crops need water but are not irrigated in time, resulting in poor development and reduced yields, etc., which are all factors that affect yield. These reasons for crop yield reduction could have been avoided as long as farmers diligently followed the star source instructions, but the problem is that they only stay in the star source world for half the time. And due to human instinct, their physical and mental strength cannot maintain a working state throughout the day. Ultimately, there will always be some reminder work that they cannot take care of, and they are powerless to do anything about the resulting production cuts. They can only hope that the star source world will show mercy and issue less maintenance work. But what Shen Xingyan is seeing now is extremely rare. After all, 12 full hours had passed, which was equivalent to 1/20th of the normal growth time of wheat. During such a long period of time, there was only one prompt icon. Although this situation is great news for most farmers, as it indicates that crops are not affected by the stagnation of the mission, Shen Xingyan feels a little weird. He thought about how before he left the star source world, the maintenance work had to be done one after another without any sympathy for him. It couldn't be that after he left, the star source world suddenly had a change of heart. This was too unreasonable. Shen Xingyan couldn't figure it out and finally had to give up, attributing it to his good fortune and the fact that Xingyuan treated him well. After all, the changes in my professional skills happened in this star wish world. Maybe the star source world is really my blessed land and can understand my feelings. Just when Shen Xingyan gave up studying this problem, attributed it to metaphysics, and was about to summon skeletons to work with him, he suddenly felt a slight movement in the wheat field in front of him. This abnormal movement frightened him so much that he quickly took 2 steps back, and he couldn't help but think, I heard that there might be some monsters in the professional space that would attack professionals, but that is only a treatment for high-level professionals. How could a little karami like me, who had just awakened to a profession, be so lucky as to receive such favor? Shen Xingyan slowly retreated while keeping a close eye on the movement that was getting closer and closer to him, just when the movement was about to appear at the edge of the wheat field. Shen Xingyan quickly equipped himself with a hoe that gave him an attack power +1, and pretended to take his turn. However, he found that the cause of this unusual movement was not a monster, but the little skeleton that had accompanied him all day yesterday. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but look at the little skeleton in front of him with a look of shock. Why haven't you disappeared yet? Chapter 14. Shen Xingyan looked at the little skeleton that had accompanied him all day yesterday, and couldn't help but shouted in surprise, and at the same time put down the hoe in his hand. At this moment, his degree of shock was revealed without any concealment. The feeling of surprise hit his brain so hard that he felt a little dizzy. However, the little skeleton still stood there stupidly, tilting its skull, as if expressing its doubts through this action. Why should I disappear? Just now it was faithfully carrying out its master's orders and weeding the wheat field according to Xingyuan's prompt icons, so Shen Xingyan did not notice it at the first time. Then it suddenly felt the breath of its master, and slowly walked over following the breath. At this moment, I heard Shen Xingyan say this to me. Fortunately, it is not a creature with emotions. Otherwise, if you work so hard for so long, and in the end your master says, why are you disappearing, it will probably leave you with an indelible psychological trauma. At this time, Shen Xingyan slowly calmed down. He looked at the little skeleton, then looked at the icon with only one maintenance task, and suddenly he realized something. It turns out that because the little skeleton has been doing farm work according to Xingyuan's instructions, Xingyuan did not impose a penalty of stagnation on the mission. If so, then everything makes sense. After figuring this out, Shen Xingyan squatted down excitedly and gently touched the little skeleton's head. He was really delighted that this little skeleton was so capable. Although I don't know why it didn't disappear as I expected, judging from the result, this is something worth celebrating. With it doing the maintenance work continuously after I left, the final harvest of this acre of wheat should reach an astonishing number. After all, no one can guarantee the various needs of crops after going offline, but the existence of the little skeleton makes Shen Xingyan the only one. Although the effect of the small skeleton will become weaker and weaker as the area of A-Euro fields increases in the future, and it will certainly not be able to keep all the fields in such excellent condition as it is now, but for now, this is a huge advantage that others cannot achieve. Caressing the little skeleton's head, Shen Xingyan had an expression of having found a treasure on his face. He was still thinking yesterday that it was really troublesome to summon a little skeleton to do work every day. After all, the new skeletons still have to teach them how to farm better. Although the efficiency is improved, there is always an extra procedure, and it is not always easy for one skeleton to use. But now it's good, the little skeleton has not disappeared, so this procedure can be saved. Little skeleton, well done. I didn't expect you to be so capable. You're awesome. Shen Xing gently held the little skeleton's head, shaking it lovingly and praising it earnestly. Seeing the little skeleton looking a little silly after being praised by him, he looked very cute. Shen Xingyan then said to him, "You didn't disappear for the entire 24 hours. It seems that I misunderstood the 24-hour cooldown period. Skeletons don't disappear after 24 hours. I like this misunderstanding. Little skeleton, we are long-term comrades from now on, so I have to give you a name instead of calling you little skeleton all the time." Shen Xingyan thought about it for a while, and suddenly a very appropriate name came to his mind. He laughed and said, "From now on, you will be called Wang Ke. You are so capable, you are really Wang Ke." This name is still very symbolic. Opening the properties of the little skeleton, Shen Xingyan changed the line with the little skeleton's name, Wang Ke, can be modified, owner, Shen Xingyan race, undead skills, none strength, 1 point agility, 1 point constitution, 1 point spirit, 1 point HP, 10 tenths points, 1 HP is restored every 10 hours, physical attack, 1 point spell attack, 1 point defense, 1 point speed, 1 point note, can perform various combat actions according to the summoner's instructions. Looking at the little skeleton's attribute value of 1 at this time, Shen Xingyan didn't feel it was so dazzling. The hard-working and capable little skeleton, no, it should be called Wang Ke. With its Wang Ke quality, attributes are not so important. What Shen Xingyan didn't notice was that after he gave the little skeleton a name, the little skeleton's body shook slightly, as if something was injected into its body, and then disappeared without a trace, as if nothing had happened. After being happy, Shen Xingyan stood up and prepared to start today's battle operation with Wang Ke. Although the surprise made him a little excited, he still had to do the farm work. The precocious Shen Xingyan knows that the road is taken step by step. No matter how capable you are, if you just stay where you are, no matter how good your talent is, it is just a vase that will break at the slightest touch. Just as Shen Xingyan picked up his hoe and was about to walk into the wheat field, suddenly a flash of light seemed to pass through his mind, and he froze in place. At this moment, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something. His mind raced as he quickly opened his attribute column and quickly set his sights on his innate skills. Summon skeleton, summon a skeleton monster with all attributes of 1 to fight, cooling time 24 hours, looking at the talent skill without a cooldown countdown, Shen Xingyan seemed to have his thoughts verified, with a look of shock all over his face. Since the cooldown time of the talent skill is 24 hours, and Wang Ke beside him really exists now, does it mean that he can use the talent skill again and summon another skeleton to help him do the work? The emergence of this thought made Shen Xingyan subconsciously stick the hoe into the ground. His body began to tremble slightly, and his hands began to shake uncontrollably with a small amplitude. Fortunately, he had the hoe as support, otherwise he would probably have collapsed on the ground. This situation lasted for quite a while, and Wang Ke, who was standing by, noticed something was wrong with Shen Xingyan, and he tilted his head up to look at him. Shen Xingyan, whose mind was in a mess, took several deep breaths and forced himself to calm down a little. At the same time, he stared at the talent skills in the attribute column. After he controlled his emotions with his strong willpower, he couldn't wait to say, use the talent skill, summon skeletons. As his innate skills were used, Shen Xingyan naturally began to sing some strange notes. A strange aura filled the world, and slowly the ground in front of Shen Xingyan began to loosen, just like the scene when Wang Ke was first summoned, and a bony head slowly emerged. When the innate skill was chanted, the second little skeleton appeared in front of Shen Xingyan. Looking at the little skeleton that looked exactly like Wang Ke, Shen Xingyan just watched quietly, apparently numb from the shock of the result. Chapter 15. Why is this skeleton summoning talent skill different from what I imagined? Not only did Wang Ke not disappear, which was already surprising enough, but now he can even summon new skeletons. If they continue to exist, then a skeleton can be summoned every 24 hours. If this timeline is extended, the future is simply unimaginable. At this moment, Shen Xingyan's mind was repeatedly circling this method. He stared at the little skeleton in front of him in a daze, and then looked at the talent skills in the attribute panel. The cooldown time mentioned in the talent skill introduction is 24 hours. He had previously subconsciously thought that this time represented the time it took for the skeleton to disappear and for a new skeleton to be summoned within 24 hours. But the facts before him now were telling him that this time was simply the skill cooling time and was not what he had imagined. This fierce surprise given by reality directly knocked Shen Xingyan from his previous excited state into a dizzy feeling. Wang Ke was also looking at the fellow in front of him in the same way. The slightly tilted skull seemed to express doubt and curiosity. When Shen Xingyan came back to his senses from the dizziness, his stiff body began to soften, and he gradually adapted to this surprise both physically and mentally. The abundant confidence that was originally generated by the magical mutation of professional skills has now become even more solid, like a rock, and has become unbreakable. Shen Xingyan checked the attributes of the little skeleton in front of him, which were almost exactly the same as Wang Ke's, with all attributes having a value of 1. Even if there are hundreds of thousands or millions of little skeletons like this on the battlefield, they are destined to not make any waves and will all be wiped out by the enemy with one skill. But it is completely different in Shen Xingyan's career space. The little skeleton's loyalty and unlimited physical strength, combined with his career skill that can increase crop progress by 10%, the role it plays is simply more powerful than any god-level skill. In the future, professional skills will increase the growth rate of crops, and the little skeletons will be responsible for all maintenance work on the farmland. When there are more and more little skeletons in the future, not only will the crop yield reach a peak, but I can also spare some time to improve my physical attributes. If nothing unexpected happens, I will be able to go to the outer battlefield to kill some low-level disasters in the future. It seems that what I dreamed of before has become a possible thing. When Shen Xingyan thought that he would be able to fight outside the boundary in the future, a surge of blood suddenly rushed into his brain and his eyes couldn't stop turning red. Ever since he awakened to the farmer profession, he had accepted the fact that his dream was shattered. But now this shattered dream was put together again by these two powerful skills, and it seemed to be within reach, which made him feel sad. Although Shen Xingyan has been much more mature than his peers since he was young, he is still just an adult after all. He usually pretends to be strong only because his family and life require him to do so. In a world surrounded by disasters, he has no choice but to do so. But now, with the protection of these two powerful skills, Shen Xingyan seems to have finally found his warm harbor, allowing him to let go of the tension he has accumulated over the years and relax himself. These two skills are more like a springboard in life, helping him to jump higher step by step. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but look up at the sky. Although it was only the sky of the Xing Yuan world, he seemed to see the blue color in the real world, which was now full of hope. Wang Ke, little skeleton, let's go and pull out the weeds. After Shen Xingyan sighed, he quickly returned to his normal self. It's just that the overall sense of ease and the firm belief deep in his eyes seemed to be deeply rooted, making him unusually stable. After hearing Shen Xingyan's instructions, Wang Ke immediately followed. He had just reached the edge of the wheat field and was about to go into the field to continue his unfinished work. But Shen Xingyan suddenly stopped, and Wang Ke also braked the car. He raised the little skull head high and looked at his master, not understanding why he stopped suddenly. Shen Xingyan did not look at Wang Ke, but turned around and looked at the little skeleton who was still standing there and did not follow his actions. Shen Xingyan was originally puzzled because the newly summoned little skeleton did not execute his orders. He looked at the little skeleton and then at Wang Ke. His puzzled expression suddenly revealed a sudden realization. He could not help but tap his forehead and muttered to himself, "Look at my memory. The little skeleton I just summoned doesn't know anything yet, let alone pulling weeds. It's a wonder it can understand the command I just gave." Then he thought about going forward to personally teach little skeleton number 2 how to pull out weeds, but Shen Xingyan had just taken half a step when he seemed to remember something and stopped on his own initiative. "Wang Ke, go teach the new little skeleton how to pull weeds." Shen Xingyan turned his head to look at his right-hand man, Chief Wang Ke, squatted down, touched its skull and whispered an order. After saying this, Shen Xingyan didn't know whether Wang Ke could understand it, but he was thinking in his heart, I have to try it anyway. Shen Xingyan's idea was actually very simple. As the skeleton team grew larger, he couldn't ask every skeleton to teach him how to do farm work. Although teaching a little skeleton how to do farm work every day does not take up too much of his time, the time spent accumulates over time and becomes a considerable amount. Especially in the future, as the profession level increases, the diversity of maintenance work will also increase. By then, the number of skeletons should have become quite considerable. If they are to be taught one by one, it will be a huge project. Wang Ke, who had been doing farm work for a whole day, was already quite familiar with all the farm work. If it could teach the newly summoned skeletons on his behalf, he would have a lot less worries. Under Shen Xingyan's expectant eyes, Wang Ke just paused slightly, as if he was processing the order conveyed to him by Shen Xingyan. Then this pause did not last long. Wang Ke walked towards the little skeleton. Shen Xingyan saw that there seemed to be something going on, so he squatted aside and observed carefully. Wang Ke walked up to the little skeleton, pointed at Shen Xingyan with his finger bones that had turned green from pulling weeds, then pointed at himself, and then knocked on the little skeleton's skull twice with his finger bones and walked towards the wheat field. The little skeleton just looked at Shen Xingyan and then at Wang Ke, lowered his head slightly, as if he understood what Wang Ke meant, and followed Wang Ke to the wheat field. Chapter 16. Shen Xingyan watched the two little skeletons walk into the wheat field and followed them, wanting to see how Wang Ke guided the little skeletons to work. Whenever Wang Ke made a move, the new little skeleton would follow suit and make the same move, but the two skeletons would skip even the previous gestures. Shen Xingyan was a little confused and didn't know how they communicated with each other. After repeating this action several times, Wang Ke stopped pulling weeds and brought the little skeleton back to Shen Xingyan. Is that all? Shen Xingyan looked at Wang Ke who was standing quietly beside him with surprise. At this moment, it seemed to have expressed that it had completed the instructions given to it by Shen Xingyan, and at the same time fell into a state of silence, standing beside Shen Xingyan and continuing to wait for the next instruction. Shen Xingyan squatted down and touched Wang Kei's skull with admiration on his face. Although this skeleton looked a little scary, it made him feel like he had found a treasure. If he was not afraid that others would think he was a pervert, he would have wanted to kiss it directly. You have to know that when he taught Wang Kei these labor movements before, it was because of his identity as Wang Kei's master, so there was naturally a bonus of skills. In addition, Shen Xingyan is a wise man. He knows clearly how to make a skeleton who knows nothing better complete his instructions. All these factors combined made it possible for Wang Kei to get started quickly. Although Wang Kei's tutorial was somewhat similar to his own, excluding the factor of the forced command of the skills, it was able to help the little skeleton get started so quickly. This shows that its efficiency is indeed much higher than Shen Xingyan, which is somewhat unbelievable. Is there a special way for skeletons to communicate with each other? Would the communication be more efficient? Shen Xingyan couldn't help but think secretly. Shen Xingyan was somewhat puzzled, so he simply asked Wang Kei directly whether it was what he had just guessed, and asked Wang Kei to nod if he thought it was right, or shake his head if he thought it was wrong. But Wang Kei seemed to not understand what his owner was saying at all and just stood there without any reaction. I am a little too greedy. It is already very good that Wang Kei can perfectly execute my basic instructions. It is too difficult for him to answer questions. Shen Xingyan shook his head in disappointment. He was indeed a little wishful thinking just now. He actually wanted a skeleton with no intelligence who could only follow instructions to answer his questions. I guess it's because things have been going too smoothly recently. The changes in my professional skills and the potential of my talent skills are almost making me paranoid. I have to proceed step by step and not be too fanciful. Shen Xingyan criticized and urged himself in his heart. Since he couldn't get any useful information from Wang Kei, and had no other way to answer his doubts, Shen Xingyan had to put this question aside for the time being. Let's go to the wheat field to complete the weeding task. Shen Xingyan said tentatively to the two skeletons. Although he had guessed the result in his heart, he was still a little worried before the result was finally presented. However, after hearing Shen Xingyan's instructions, Wang Kei and his little follower skeleton just started weeding in one direction. Looking at the result in front of him, Shen Xingyan exclaimed that it was amazing. From now on, the task of guiding the planting will be handed over to Wang Kei. He only needs to give an instruction and it will be done. It saves both worry and effort. Shen Xingyan thought happily. With 3 workers pulling weeds together, the efficiency was quite high and the task was completed quickly. However, when the weeding maintenance prompt disappeared, Shen Xingyan remembered that he was just shocked by the magical effects of the talent skills and the outstanding abilities of the little skeleton. Shen Xingyan felt a little sorry that he did not use his powerful professional skills immediately after the cooldown ended, wasting several minutes. At the same time, he immediately used his professional skills, consuming 5 points of energy, increasing the growth rate of crops in 1 acre of land by 10%. Congratulations, you have successfully used your professional skills. Farmer professional experience points +1. As the effects of professional skills were applied to this acre of wheat field, Shen Xingyan, who was in the field, clearly felt that the surrounding wheat had reached its growth limit and began to develop towards ear formation. Looking at the wheat emitting vitality, Shen Xingyan's previous slight grudge against the farming profession was gradually dispelled. He suddenly realized the joy that a farmer should have, which is the joy of creating life. Watching the crops in the fields grow little by little with hope and finally become what they want, this feeling of cultivation is probably something that only every farmer can feel, and it really fascinates Shen Xingyan. If it weren't for the external disasters, being an ordinary farmer would actually be quite happy. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but think in his heart. After sighing, Shen Xingyan no longer hesitated, because the irrigation maintenance icon had begun to appear above the wheat field. He hurriedly took Wang Kei and the little skeleton to get back to work. Under Wang Kei's instruction, the little skeleton quickly became familiar with the various maintenance work in the wheat field, and his movements became more and more skillful, resulting in a sudden increase in their work efficiency. With the joint efforts of the 3 laborers, all kinds of maintenance work on an acre of wheat field would be quickly completed by them shortly after they started. Compared with the first day, the difficulty of completing the task could be said to be much easier. However, Xingyuan's prompt tasks seemed to be as strong as the little skeleton's physical strength, with no signs of stopping. Often, as soon as they finished one prompt, another prompt would be immediately given, leaving Shen Xingyan no chance to rest. After 5 or 6 hours of hard work, Shen Xingyan's physical strength was almost reaching the warning line. Xingyuan's prompts began to slow down, and the idle time between the 2 prompts began to lengthen little by little. Shen Xingyan spent 2 copper coins to buy 2 steamed buns at Xingyuan Mall. He was sitting on the ground eating them and obviously noticed that the prompt was slowly slowing down. He immediately felt relieved. Plus 10% growth is indeed very powerful, but it also requires a workforce to match it. Otherwise, if I were to maintain this acre of wheat field by myself, I'm afraid that not only would multiple icons appear above the wheat field, but the wheat would also be penalized by the mission stagnation, resulting in a significant reduction in the final harvest. While Shen Xingyan was chewing on a steamed bun to restore his strength, he marveled at the complementary nature of the 2 skills. If any one of the skills appeared alone, it would not have such an amazing effect. Chapter 17. Watching the 2 little skeletons busy in the wheat field, Shen Xingyan's eyes were filled with envy. These skeletons with no physical limitations were simply innate working saints. Shen Xingyan finished eating the steamed bun and lay on the ground, slowly recovering his strength. Looking at the peaceful sky of Xingyuan, he felt extremely comfortable and at ease. When thinking about his two powerful skills, Shen Xingyan's face was full of smiles. The feeling of happiness rushed to his head, causing him to fall asleep unknowingly. After a while, the icons in the wheat field disappeared, and Wang Kai and the little skeleton returned to Shen Xingyan, who had fallen into a deep sleep. The two little skeletons quietly looked at their master lying motionless on the ground. They had never slept before and had no idea why Shen Xingyan was in this state. They just subconsciously stood on his left and right to protect him. It was not until the prompt icon above the wheat field lit up again that Wang Kai brought the little skeleton into the wheat field again. After all, Shen Xingyan had already given them instructions. As long as an icon appeared above the wheat field, they would go to the wheat field to perform corresponding work. However, when the two little skeletons completed the work on the star source icon again and returned to Shen Xingyan, they found that he was still sleeping, and then a similar scene began to happen again and again. Until the majesty of the Xing Yuan world brushed Shen Xingyan's cheek, this time waking him up from his sleep. Shen Xingyan woke up and realized that he had really fallen asleep just now. He suddenly opened his eyes with a trace of panic in his eyes. He called up the page to check the time and found that more than 3 hours had passed. Shen Xingyan stood up in a panic and hurriedly checked the situation in the wheat field. At the same time, he couldn't help but blame himself. Why did I fall asleep? I was so lazy. I just started to relax my restraints because of the powerful skills. How could this be possible? Fortunately, I saw an irrigation icon floating above the wheat field, and there were no multiple icons existing at the same time. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that during the time he was resting, the two little skeletons had been working according to his instructions. Fortunately, I have already given them basic instructions before, otherwise I don't know how many copper coins I would have lost in this sleep. Shen Xingyan thought to himself with gratitude. Then he stretched his body, which was a little stiff from sleeping, and was about to join the work in the wheat field, but he saw that the icon had disappeared and two little skeletons slowly appeared in Shen Xingyan's field of vision. Shen Xingyan looked at the two little skeletons that seemed to have crawled out of a mud pit. He felt that they were well behaved and cute no matter how he looked at them. He gently wiped the mud off their skulls and suddenly felt happy when he looked at them. Although they are his summons and should act according to his orders, Shen Xingyan doesn't think so. It may be because their hard work reminds Shen Xingyan of himself as a farmer. It is also possible that they have a mysterious connection with Shen Xingyan, which makes Shen Xingyan feel familiar when he looks at them. Work hard, your master won't treat you unfairly. When he has money in the future, he will buy you some clothes to wear. Shen Xingyan said to them with a chuckle. Looking at the two skeletons with slightly different physical signs, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but think. The skeletons were so similar. As the number of skeletons increased in the future, how should he distinguish them? At the same time, he began to think about how to manage the little skeletons in the future when there are more of them. He couldn't just swarm over and kill them as soon as a prompt appeared, like he did now. Although this approach is feasible, it still feels too messy. Imagine hundreds of skeletons working at the same time in an acre of land. Not to mention their efficiency, the sound of collisions between skeletons alone would be endless. As Shen Xingyan thought about it, he couldn't help but focus his eyes on Wang Kai again. After all, this first little skeleton was the one that gave him the most surprises. Since it could help him guide the new little skeleton in his work, could it also help him manage the work of the skeletons? Shen Xingyan thinks this is a method worth trying. If it doesn't work in the end, he can only slowly summarize it later to see how many skeletons are most efficient in managing 1 acre of land, and then distribute it manually. As his professional level increases, he will be able to expand his farmland with money in the future, and then the little skeletons with surplus labor will also have a place to display their skills. However, this is a bad idea. Wang Kai, this little skeleton will be under your charge from now on. You will be Captain Wang Kai from now on. The maintenance of this acre of land will be fully entrusted to you. I will also add new team members to your position as captain. Work hard and you will have a bright future. Shen Xingyan patted Wang Kai's shoulder bones and entrusted him with important tasks. Just looking at Wang Kai's motionless appearance, Shen Xingyan didn't know whether it could understand what he meant. Shen Xingyan was not in a hurry. After all, there were only 2 skeletons at the moment. He decided to try it first. If this method is really feasible, in the future all matters concerning the farmland can be handed over to the little skeletons. He only needs to come to the Star Source world on time every day to perform 2 skills, and he will not need to do anything else. In this way, he will also have time to improve his real body's strength in reality. Since the emergence of Star Source, almost everyone who has successfully awakened will use up the time they spend in the Star Source world every day before returning to reality. But in reality, apart from normal rest time, they don't have much time to exercise. For them, the longer they stay in the Star Wish world, not only can their career level be upgraded, but it also means more money they can earn in Star Source, and it will be easier to extract anything from the Star Wish world into reality in the future. Shen Xingyan is just the opposite. As the number of little skeletons increases in the future, the role he plays in the farmland will become smaller and smaller. It would be more practical for him to exercise in reality. Although the final effect of training in reality is not comparable to those combat professionals who can quickly upgrade in the Star Source world, accumulate money quickly, and exchange their professional skills for real-life skills. But this is all he can do at this stage. Since he can't count on much in terms of combat skills, he can only rely on his own body. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but fantasize that when he was rich enough in the future, could he also learn from those combat professionals and exchange the expensive attribute points to the real world, so as to realize his dream of going out to kill. Disasters. Chapter 18. The beautiful fantasy of the future made Shen Xingyan chuckle and cheered up. At this time, Xingyuan's reminder appeared above the wheat field. Shen Xingyan did not hesitate and immediately took the two little skeletons into the wheat field and began to work step by step. The recovery of physical strength and mental excitement made Shen Xingyan full of energy, so much so that as soon as Xingyuan's prompt came out, the three model workers would quickly eliminate it. As the efficiency became faster and faster, Xingyuan seemed to be shocked by the three of them, or perhaps the after effects of the previous plus 20% growth progress had weakened, causing the time intervals between prompts to become longer and longer. Shen Xingyan slowly realized that he actually had a few rest days, which was a privilege he didn't have yesterday. During the break, Shen Xingyan looked at the little skeleton and couldn't help but smile. It was different with one more laborer. The wheat in the wheat field is growing better and better because of the efficient maintenance work completed by Shen Xingyan and his team. The ears of wheat are also getting bigger and bigger. It is foreseeable that if there are no major problems in the future, high yields are inevitable. Working on and off like this, Shen Xingyan's stay in the planet source world today is slowly coming to an end. Looking at the countdown on Xingyuan's prompt, Shen Xingyan squatted down and rubbed the two little skeletons' heads a few times, and said softly, "I need to leave for a while. From now on, this acre of land will be handed over to you to manage. Although Wang Ke was only summoned one day in advance, you are still an old man. Please take good care of the little skeleton." Shen Xingyan laughed as he spoke. He thought secretly, even though he knew intellectually that they would definitely follow his instructions and there was no need for him to say so much, his words just now were just speaking to the air and would not get any response from the two little skeletons. But he still couldn't help but remind her, which might have something to do with his experience of taking care of girls in recent years. Shen Xingyan chuckled and shook his head slightly, then waved to Wang Ke and the little skeleton, and disappeared into the Xingyuan world in an instant with a slight movement of consciousness. Wang Ke and the little skeleton standing at the edge of the field watched their master disappear into thin air. They slowly turned their skulls, as if they were instinctively looking for Shen Xingyan. Wang Ke experienced this yesterday. After searching in vain, he quickly stopped and turned his body towards the direction of the wheat field. The new little skeleton kept turning around and looking. Although it could not find Shen Xingyan's breath from that subtle connection, it did not give up and was still searching blindly. Until a new prompt icon appeared above the wheat field, Wang Ke accurately followed Shen Xingyan's instructions and walked towards the wheat field. But halfway through the walk, I found that the little skeleton was still looking around and didn't notice any new prompt icons. Wang Ke slowly turned around and went back, then hit the little skeleton's skull with a bang, causing the little skeleton, which was turning its head, to freeze there. The little skeleton tilted his head slightly to look at Wang Ke, only to see Wang Ke slowly stretch out his finger bones, pointing to the icon above the wheat field, and then turned and walked towards the wheat field. The little skeleton, who had been taught a lesson by Wang Ke, also followed Wang Ke with his head lowered, showing no sign of resistance, as if it had been intimidated by Wang Ke's pressure. Shen Xingyan returned to the real world and slowly opened his eyes like yesterday, but the difference was that he looked energetic at this moment. The new discovery of talent and skills today made Shen Xingyan very excited. In addition, sleeping in the Xingyuan world had the same effect as in reality. The more than 3 hours that Shen Xingyan rested in Xingyuan was equivalent to a rest. The combination of these two factors gave him his current energy and spirit. After Shen Xingyan woke up, he kept checking the information on his Xingyuan card, confirming its authenticity again and again. Finally, he looked at the ceiling with a happy face. He was so happy that he couldn't help himself. He wanted to announce to the world right now, he, Shen Xingyan, is no longer the defenseless peasant. As long as he is given time, his achievements will definitely shock all creatures, including those invading disasters. Fortunately, rationality suddenly appeared at this time and suppressed this impulse. Keep a low profile. Before you have enough strength, don't reveal yourself to anyone. Remember, remember. Shen Xingyan, who was excited, quickly warned himself in his heart. Exhaling heavily, Shen Xingyan got up and started cooking. It was still early in the morning, and in order not to disturb his sister so early, he carefully prepared meals for both himself and his sister. After swallowing his share, he returned to his room. He tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep, so he began to exercise by gently dancing his body in the room according to the physical techniques taught in school. In this time when people are either immersed in the star source world or immersed in dreams, people who exercise like Shen Xingyan are definitely rare. It was not until the sky gradually brightened that Shen Xingyan slowly stopped exercising. The 2 hours of exercise had consumed a lot of his physical energy. I took out the star source card and checked it. My physical strength had dropped to 4 points. It would soon be a weak state. At this time, he heard a slight noise outside. Shen Xingyan knew that his sister had gotten up. He quickly changed his sweat-soaked clothes and walked out of the room. Hey, brother, why are you awake? Shen Xingyan was surprised to see her brother walking out of the room at this time. According to her speculation, her brother should have come out of the star source world at around 5 or 6 in the morning. That time period was when people were the most sleepy, so he should still be asleep now. It's nothing. Let's eat quickly. It's already been prepared for you. Shen Xingyan ruffled his sister's hair and said with a doting smile. Shen Xingyan nodded in agreement when she heard that, and started to eat breakfast without any doubt. She hadn't seen her brother for 2 days, and she was very happy to see him and talk to him before going to school today. Brother, what is the Xingyuan world like? I heard that it is much more lively than here and as prosperous as before the disaster. Shen Xingyan asked curiously while eating, his eyes full of longing. Shen Xingyan heated up 2 steamed buns for himself and explained his first impressions while eating. Although he had basically spent the past 2 days in the professional space, it did not prevent him from sharing the peaceful street with his sister. As Shen Xingyan listened to her brother's description, her eyes became brighter. Chapter 19. After seeing off his sister to school, Shen Xingyan returned to his room and started exercising. His awakened body seemed to have been freed from restrictions. After each exercise, he could feel his body's slight growth. Although such growth may seem insignificant in the eyes of a combat profession, for him who is full of hope, every progress is a happy thing. Shen Xingyan seemed to forget the existence of time while exercising non-stop, and devoted himself to it wholeheartedly, just like when he was in school. However, due to the limitations of space and facilities, the effect was not as good as in school. The exercise continued until almost noon, when Shen Xingyan began to show signs of mental fatigue and his physical strength decreased a lot. In this situation, he could only rely on sleep to make up for the mental exhaustion. After stopping and feeling a little tired, Shen Xingyan heaved a sigh of relief and prepared to cook some food to reserve his energy for today's trip to Xingyuan. After all, the consciousness has entered the star source world, but the body is still in reality, and it will take 12 hours, so the spirit can be replenished by resting in the star source. However, if you want to maintain your physical strength in reality, you can only return to reality to replenish it. I heard that there are some advanced alchemical products and medicines that can allow the body to slowly recover its physical strength over a period of time, thus achieving a balance between physical consumption and replenishment. But the price is beyond Shen Xingyan's reach at this stage, so he doesn't consider it. On the way to the kitchen, Shen Xingyan suddenly felt the Xingyuan card vibrate. He picked it up with some confusion and saw Chu Wei's picture on the card. When Shen Xingyan's eyes fell on the picture, he heard a reminder from the Xingyuan card, "Chu Wei wants to talk to you, do you want to answer?" It was at this time that Shen Xingyan remembered that the Xingyuan card had a calling function. The first time Shen Xingyan used this small phone to make a call, he couldn't help but feel a sense of novelty. Before awakening, Shen Xingyan basically lived a life of going between 2 points and rarely needed to use the call function. He only knew about communicating through a card from his teacher's explanation and from occasional communication among the awakened ones, but he himself had never used it. After connecting with the mind, Chu Wei's energetic voice also appeared, "Shen Xingyan, long time no see, how have you been recently? It's only been 2 days since we last met. How can it be a long time?" Shen Xingyan was somewhat amused by Chu Wei's exaggerated remarks, and then responded, "I'm fine recently, how about you?" "Hehe, this is the first time we haven't seen each other for such a long time. It's been a long time. I just reached level 2 yesterday. All my attributes increased by 1 point. I also have 2 free attribute points. I put them into spirit. Now my spirit has 14 points. The cooldown time of professional skills has also been reduced, but it is too expensive to extract skills and attribute points to the real world. The equipment, materials, and money I got from killing monsters in the past 2 days are not enough to fill the gaps in my teeth." Chu Wei seemed to have opened up her chatterbox, chattering away all of her experiences over the past 2 days to Shen Xingyan, as if she had finally found someone to talk to and had to quickly relieve her worries. Shen Xingyan just listened quietly, helping her analyze the specific situation from time to time and giving some small suggestions, just like when she was in school. "The difference is that back then we were facing each other, but now we are facing a card. Shen Xingyan, why do you seem to have become much calmer? More stable than before?" Chu Wei was observing Shen Xingyan's reaction while talking about her own things. Chu Wei initiated this call in order to have a good chat with Shen Xingyan and share what she had seen and heard in the past 2 days. But what is more important is to care about Shen Xingyan's recent condition. After all, no one knows his determination to become a combat professional better than her. Seeing that he had talked so much about the combat professions, but the other party's tone did not change much, as if he had really let it go, this made his originally worried mind slowly calm down. She was naturally delighted that the other person was able to recover to his original state. Shen Xingyan naturally heard the concern in Chu Wei's words, and replied softly, "After going through some things, you have to grow up, right? People still have to look forward." Shen Xingyan didn't say anything else. He couldn't reveal any of his secrets to anyone else, not even to his own sisters. The impact would be too great, and not telling them was also a kind of protection for them. Chu Wei nodded vigorously after hearing this, and said with a relaxed smile, "This is the Shen Xingyan I know. I feel relieved to see you like this." The two agreed to meet at the trial 1 month later, and then ended the call. Through this phone call, Shen Xingyan personally experienced the horror of the combat profession. Even though he possessed such professional skills, he still could not keep up with the upgrade speed of combat professions, let alone ordinary life professions. Combat professions can upgrade 1 level every 2 days, but if they plant the lowest level 1 seeds, it will take at least 9 days to produce a harvest. And you may not be able to upgrade after the harvest. Xingyuan needs to judge based on the value of the final output and give corresponding professional experience points. In this comparison, the gap is huge. In 9 days, it is estimated that they have reached level 3 or 4. The difference in their attributes is even more overwhelming. The gap between life professions and combat professions can be seen from this. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but sigh in his heart, but when he thought of his 2 powerful skills, the sigh that had just risen in his heart suddenly disappeared. You should be content. You already have such great skills. Don't worry about other things. The important thing is to focus on farming and improving yourself. Shen Xingyan secretly warned himself. After hastily making some food and stuffing it into his stomach to satisfy his hungry stomach, Shen Xingyan returned to his room and lay on the bed. He set the time to enter the Xingyuan world and prepared to take a nap to restore his energy. However, when he habitually placed the star source card on his forehead, he suddenly discovered that his own attributes were different. Name, Shen Xingyan No 11812043142527 Occupation, Farmer Professional Skills, 1 Consume a certain amount of energy points to increase the growth rate of crops within a specified range by 10%. The larger the range, the more energy points are consumed. The interval is 10 hours and the skill cooldown is 24 hours. Strength, 10 points Agility, 10 points Constitution, 11 points Spirit, 10 points HP, 110/110 points Rating, 18/18 points Physical Strength, 8/11 points Physical Attack, 10 points Spell Attack, 10 points Defense, 11 points Speed, 10 points Talent. Summon Skeletons. Summon a skeleton monster with all attributes of 1 to fight. Cooling time 24 hours. Money, 0 gold, 0 silver, 6 bronze. Entrance to Xingyuan World A, 3 hours countdown. Shen Xingyan, who was about to close his eyes, suddenly opened them and checked his attributes again. He found that it was not his eyes playing tricks on him just now, and his physical fitness had really improved a little. Chapter 20. My physical fitness has actually improved a little. It seems that the training over the past 2 days is quite effective. What the teachers said about needing to accumulate strength before awakening so that I can improve myself faster afterwards is actually true. Shen Xingyan was a little excited. Although it was just a simple increase in attributes, it seemed insignificant compared to the 6 points of attributes that Chu Wei gained after leveling up. But for Shen Xingyan at this stage, this increase in attribute points has made him see the significance of training in the real world, which is enough. There are not many things in this world that will be rewarded if you put in effort, and exercise is one of them. This is a truth that Shen Xingyan knew very early on, and it is also a major internal motivation for him to be among the top students in school for a long time. Moreover, according to the knowledge taught by the school before, the attribute values A euro he improved through training in reality were improved simultaneously in the real world and the star source world. This is equivalent to the fact that his physical fitness in the star source world has now been raised to 11 points. However, using money to extract the attributes of the star source world to the real world has no such effect. 11 points is still 11 points. After he upgraded to the Xingyuan world, if he wanted to keep the attributes of the real world consistent with it, he could only pay money to extract the attributes. After a burst of excitement, the long accumulated sleepiness came over him like a ferocious disaster. Within a few seconds, Shen Xingyan's room fell into a state of silence. At this time, the only sounds in the room were his steady breathing and the ticking of the clock, and no other sounds. At this time in the Xingyuan space, in Shen Xingyan's planting space, 2 little skeletons were at one end of the wheat field, looking up with their skulls quietly at the sky above the wheat field, waiting for the new Xingyuan indicator icon to appear. However, unlike the little skeleton, Wang Ke did not stand there stiffly staring at the sky without moving, but looked up from time to time, and the whole skeleton was also sitting on the ground. Seeing 2 skeletons, one standing and one sitting, makes people subconsciously feel that Wang Ke is smarter. However, if you look closely, you will find that Wang Ke's sitting posture gives people a weird feeling, as if he is deliberately imitating something, which is a bit like a fool trying to imitate someone else. This state lasted for a while until a new prompt icon reappeared above the wheat field. Wang Ke then stood up and walked towards the wheat field, while the little skeleton slowly followed behind him, with no intention of moving forward. 3 hours later, Shen Xingyan was awakened by the alarm clock. Although he was still a little sleepy, he forced himself to wake up, got up, went to the kitchen, got a steamed bun and ate it. Then he quickly lay back on the bed, placed the star source card on his forehead again, connected the black card with his consciousness, and entered the star source world again. His eyes went dark, and when Shen Xingyan opened them again, he appeared in his planting space. With the appearance of Shen Xingyan, Wang Ke and the little skeletons' bodies began to tremble, as if they were stimulated by something, but they were unconscious and did not notice anything unusual. Through subtle connections, they sensed the presence of Shen Xingyan, and immediately put down their farm work and moved towards Shen Xingyan. This time, Shen Xingyan would not be scared away by the movement of the 2 skeletons like he was yesterday. Instead, he looked at the 2 little skeletons walking towards him, their bodies full of traces of labor, and nodded with satisfaction. Looking up at the wheat fields that have taken on a completely different look, I feel particularly relaxed. When the 2 skeletons came to him, Shen Xingyan asked them to stand beside him, and then directly used his innate skill, summon skeletons. After a set of increasingly familiar chants, the 3rd little skeleton also appeared in his space. The 3rd skeleton in front of him was somewhat different from the previous 2. If Wang Ke and the 2nd little skeleton were both rusty, then this one looked a little cleaner and gave people a slightly stronger feeling. Shen Xingyan's mind moved slightly, and he checked its properties with shining eyes. However, after Shen Xingyan checked its properties, he found nothing unexpected happened. All the property values A euro were still 1. This gave him a little hope. He was hoping for another miracle to happen, but it was like a bucket of cold water was poured on him. I am really greedy. I have already used 2 amazing skills, but I am still thinking about whether other good things will appear. This is too greedy. Shen Xingyan shook his head with a sigh and conducted a profound self-examination of his subconscious thoughts. Wang Ke, this little skeleton will be your team member from now on and will be under your management. Please take good care of it. Shen Xingyan patted Wang Ke's skull gently and instructed with a smile. He then threw the skeleton to Wang Ke and told Wang Ke to train the new skeleton how to do farm work while working. Looking at the icons above the farmland, Shen Xingyan and his team quickly eliminated the prompts, and the cooling time of Shen Xingyan's professional skills was also completed. Standing in the center of the wheat field, Shen Xingyan silently recited in his heart to activate his professional skills. A familiar movement of energy flowed through his body, and the equipped walking stick also emitted a strange wave, which instantly enveloped the entire wheat field. Congratulations, you have successfully used your professional skills. Farmer professional experience points +1. The ears of wheat crops around them began to swell rapidly, and the outlines of wheat grains began to slowly emerge. However, the careful Shen Xingyan discovered that the number of wheat grains on each wheat ear was nearly twice as much as that in the book. This discovery made the smile on Shen Xingyan's face more and more obvious. This indicates that the harvest the day after tomorrow should be much higher than the highest yield per mu recorded in the books. How could he not be happy? Gently touching the wheat around, and looking at this acre of wheat field full of hope for a good harvest, every wheat plant seems to be showing Shen Xingyan their uniqueness and thanking Shen Xingyan for his care for them. This gave him a strong sense of accomplishment, and his tired mind and body were instantly filled with motivation. As the professional skills were used, prompt icons of the wheat field began to appear rapidly. However, Shen Xingyan was not panicked at all. He led the 3 skeletons to conquer these prompts that seemed to pose no threat at all. With 4 laborers taking care of 1 acre of land at the same time, the improvement in efficiency is significant. Xingyuan's prompts are often quickly resolved by Shen Xingyan and others shortly after they appear, resulting in Xingyuan's prompts being updated every few minutes. This went on for nearly 2 hours, and Shen Xingyan clearly felt that Xingyuan's prompts had begun to slow down. After another hour, there was no need to feel it anymore, because they had to wait for a while before new prompts would appear. It was not until this time that Shen Xingyan walked out of the wheat field, lay down at one end of the field, closed his eyes gently and fell asleep, and the wheat field was completely left to Wang Ke and the others. The prompts appeared so quickly that Wang Ke and the others were able to handle them completely. They even had time to stay beside Shen Xingyan for a while, as if they were protecting him instinctively. If it weren't for Shen Xingyan's instructions, they would probably stay by Shen Xingyan's side and stick to their instincts. Chapter 21. Time moves forward slowly, without stopping for anyone. Just like that, 2 days passed, and it was the 6th day after wheat planting. This day was also the day of harvest for Shen Xingyan. On the 4th day, with the appearance of the 4th little skeleton, the maintenance task of this acre of wheat basically no longer required the participation of Shen Xingyan, and the 4 little skeletons could already handle it completely. Shen Xingyan also began to have plenty of rest time, which made him start to replan his daily schedule. On the 4th and 5th days, he used his talents and professional skills in the professional space and then went to sleep. After sleeping for 7 hours in the Xingyuan world and replenishing his spirit, Shen Xingyan would choose to return to the real world and start exercising his body. With the motivation of the previous attribute improvement, he is particularly keen on training and improving attributes in reality, and this is also the only way for him to become stronger now. Without the accumulation of resources, even if his career level was raised and he gained attribute points from the upgrade, he did not have the financial resources to extract the attributes of the star source world into the real world. At least this idea was not feasible at this stage. After 2 days of training, Shen Xingyan's attributes did not show any surprises like on the 3rd day. His physical attribute was still 11 points, and there was no movement in other aspects. It seemed that the attribute that was improved before should be the result of sedimentation before awakening. However, although this result disappointed Shen Xingyan, it did not dispel his idea of a exercising, because after each exercise, he would feel a slight growth in his body, which was very subtle but did exist. This feeling would not be wrong. Although it was not reflected in the attribute points, he believed that in the long run there would always be results that would satisfy him. However, there was one thing that gave Shen Xingyan a headache. Due to the increase in exercise time in the past 2 days, the originally planned food intake also increased, resulting in signs of food depletion. Looking at the little food left in the kitchen, Shen Xingyan finally understood what it meant to be in trouble for a penny. But fortunately, today is the day of harvest. According to the growth of wheat observed yesterday, those full ears of wheat would have fallen to the ground long ago if they were not supported by the thick stalks. Shen Xingyan was full of expectations for the yield of this acre of wheat. He even thought about it when he was sleeping and exercising. Seeing that it was only a few minutes before the harvest, Shen Xingyan cleaned up the last bit of food in the kitchen and hurried back to the room. He connected his consciousness to the Xingyuan card and entered the Xingyuan world. When Shen Xingyan opened his eyes again, it was still the familiar working space, without any surprises. His eyes involuntarily looked at the acre of golden wheat field in front of him. The scene of the wheat field at this moment was obviously a bumper harvest, which would surprise anyone who saw it. It's just because this is completely different from the wheat fields they have in mind. If you compare the two, they are not even on the same level. If a farmer insists on comparing his wheat field with it, the result can be imagined. He will only be so envious that he covers his face and cries. With the appearance of Shen Xingyan, 6 little skeletons also appeared beside him one after another. Judging from their positions, the captain Wang Ke was the one closest to Shen Xingyan, while the other 5 little skeletons were obviously standing a little further back. At this time, the cool-down time of Shen Xingyan's talent skills and professional skills had not yet ended, so he did not use the 2 skills as usual, but gently stroked Wang Ke's skull beside him, quietly waiting for the sign that the wheat field was ripe. As time was running out, Shen Xingyan, who was a little anxious, couldn't help but walk forward to check Xiaomei's current situation. The Xingyan world did not let Shen Xingyan wait too long. As the wheat field officially entered the maturity period, the Xingyan world's reminder also sounded in Shen Xingyan's ears. Congratulations! The crops you planted for the first time have matured. You will be rewarded with a sickle. Please harvest them as soon as possible. Xingyan will reward you with corresponding experience points based on your final yield. To Shen Xingyan at that moment, this mechanical reminder sounded like the sound of nature. It made him, who was squatting to check the wheat ears, stand up suddenly, and his eyes naturally turned to the icon above the wheat field, indicating that it was time to harvest. I've finally waited until this moment. Shen Xingyan clenched his fists excitedly. Looking at the prompt icon that kept moving, as if tempting him to harvest quickly, he thought about it and quickly took the sickle from the backpack, and checked the properties of the sickle. Item, scythe attribute, attack +1 no level requirement, no durability limit, an essential tool for the farmer profession. The properties are the same as the hoe rewarded before, only the shape is slightly different. Both can be heirlooms. Shen Xingyan was excited to start harvesting, but suddenly thought of his capable men. Looking back, I found that they were looking up at Shen Xingyan. They were shaking their skulls in confusion at this unfamiliar icon, as if they were unable to work according to Shen Xingyan's previous instructions. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but slap his head. This kind of harvest icon appeared for the first time. Even Wang Ke didn't know how to deal with it, let alone the other skeletons. Shen Xingyan looked at the 5 little skeletons in front of him, but now he only had a sickle in his hand. He wanted to equip each skeleton with one, but he couldn't do it because he was short of money. Xingyuan shopping mall does sell sickles, but the cheapest one costs 10 copper coins, which Shen Xingyan cannot afford now. Shen Xingyan had no choice but to let them pull out the wheat with their hands, and then put it in one place, waiting for him to deal with it. Although this was a bit inefficient, there was no other way. However, there is one advantage of the Xingyan world that Shen Xingyan feels very considerate, that is, there is no need to thresh the wheat after harvesting it like in the real world. All you need to do is use your mind to store the harvested crops into your backpack space, and they will be automatically split according to Shen Xingyan's wishes. Take wheat as an example. After it is stored in the backpack, it can be separated into wheat and wheat straw. This is very friendly to farmers and saves them most of their time. Chapter 22. With Shen Xingyan's order, the harvesting of this acre of wheat officially started. Shen Xingyan naturally took the lead. He rushed into the wheat field with a sickle and began to harvest the wheat. At the same time, he put the harvested wheat into the space backpack through his mind. This operation greatly improved his harvesting efficiency. Compared with Shen Xingyan's unstoppable momentum and courageous progress, the harvesting journey of the 6 little skeletons seems a bit bumpy. Since they all had one attribute point, their movements were slow, and coupled with their unfamiliarity with the job, the amount of wheat harvested by the 6 little skeletons combined was barely higher than that of Shen Xingyan. However, as their movements became more proficient, the little skeletons' efficiency gradually improved. They were getting more and more adept at pulling, and when they were about to get into the state, they suddenly stopped there. Because this small acre of land had been completely harvested by the 7 laborers in such a short period of time. Shen Xingyan was just about to put the wheat harvested by the little skeletons into the space backpack, when he suddenly heard Xingyuan's prompt tone, "Congratulations, you have completed your first crop harvesting mission and are rewarded with a warehouse. The newbie planting guidance has ended. Please work hard to start your career upgrade journey." As Xingyuan's prompt sound ended, a small house-like building suddenly appeared in Shen Xingyan's career space, standing quietly at the edge of the space. Before he could go forward to check the properties of the warehouse, Xingyuan's second prompt sound began to sound. "Congratulations. You have planted 600 square meters of wheat and harvested 1,800 kilograms of wheat. You have earned 180 points of farmer professional experience." The appearance of this number made Shen Xingyan stand still for a moment. The wheat yield of this small acre of land was as high as 1,800 kilograms. Although he had already anticipated that the output this time would definitely reach a relatively high level, he did not expect it to be so high. You have to know that an ordinary farmer can only produce 500 to 600 kilograms at most after working hard for 10 days. For example, those high-level farmers could produce around 800 to 900 kilograms, but his current output was more than double that of those high-level farmers. Not to mention comparing with the farmers of the same level as him now, the gap is obviously even greater. A rough calculation shows that it is 3 times as much as theirs. With such a result, I'm afraid no one would believe it even if Shen Xingyan told others about it. It is really too unbelievable. Shen Xingyan subconsciously converted the wheat into copper coins of equal value. He could get 2 copper coins for selling 1 kilogram of wheat to Xingyuan Mall. So, for 1,800 kilograms of wheat, that would be 3,600 copper coins, equivalent to 360 yuan before the energy explosion. In 5 days, I earned 3,600 copper coins, an average of 720 copper coins per day. This speed of earning money should be close to catching up with ordinary combat professions. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but think. However, before he could finish lamenting the impact of such a large sum of money on him, a prompt sound suddenly appeared in the Xingyuan world, "Congratulations. You have significantly broken the record of 1,116 kilograms of wheat per muse so far and have successfully reached 1,800 kilograms. As a special reward, you will receive an additional 1,800 square meters of cultivated land and a 30% discount on permanent seeds. Xingyuan will make an announcement throughout the district. Do you want to make the information public?" This tip from Xingyuan confused Shen Xingyan. You know, 1,800 square meters is equivalent to the size of 3 acres of land. According to the records in the book, it should cost 300 gold coins to buy it from the Xingyan world. 300 gold coins. That is equivalent to the cost of extracting 30 attribute points into reality. With such a large reward, Shen Xingyan felt like he was overwhelmed by the money. Xingyan world was really generous this time. Moreover, land can only be purchased from the Xingyan Mall after reaching level 10. Even if the family has enough money, if they do not meet the level requirements and want to buy land, they can only do so at a higher price. A newcomer like Shen Xingyan, who already owns such a large amount of land at this stage, is definitely a rare existence in the entire Xingyan world. The second reward, a 30% discount on seeds, may not seem very impressive now, but it is a real reward that helps Shen Xingyan save money. Especially as his level gets higher in the future, the seeds he can buy will become more and more expensive, and the value of the 30% discount will become more and more prominent. Do you want to make the information public? Xingyuan's reminder sounded again, and Shen Xingyan, who was a little dizzy from the reward, came back to his senses and quickly chose not to make the information public. What a joke. With his weak arms and legs now, if others knew of his existence, there would probably be nothing left of him. This is definitely not an exaggeration. There are many good people in the world, but the lethality of 100 good people compared to one bad person is completely not on the same level. As Shen Xingyan finished his choice, the entire Xingyan space began to echo with waves of prompt sounds. Professional so-and-so has significantly broken the record of 1,116 kilograms of wheat per muse so far, and successfully reached a result of 1,800 kilograms. He is specially rewarded with an additional 1,800 square meters of cultivated land and a 30% discount on permanent seeds. This is now announced to the entire district. This reminder echoed in the Star Source world 3 times before it stopped. After the reminder sound stopped, the Star Source world seemed to fall into a brief silence. Which old guy is leaving the high-level seeds alone and fiddling with the level 1 seeds? I really made a fortune from it. An old man in simple clothes was taking good care of the farmland, muttering with disgust. This is impossible. It is impossible that someone can achieve such a high result. How can they produce such a high yield after working non-stop for such a long time? I don't believe it. Another middle-aged man who was dazzlingly gorgeous looked at the sky of Xingyan with disbelief on his face. It's been a long time since the farmer profession has appeared in the district-wide announcement. It's really rare. A livelihood profession can be played like this. It's really an eye-opener. People who heard this reminder had different reactions. Some were unwilling to believe it, some looked curious, some complained, and so on, but more of them were indifferent. Although it was a district-wide announcement, the target was just the worst profession in life. In their view, it was just a flash in the pan and there was nothing worth paying attention to. After Shen Xingyan heard the entire district's announcement, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. His own information could not be seen at all in the announcement, which made him feel relieved and excited at the same time. Why does he feel so good when everyone else is drunk but I am the only one? Sober. Chapter 23. As the announcement of the entire Xingyan world came out, the acre of farmland in front of Shen Xingyan began to expand rapidly outward with the well rewarded by Xingyan world as the center, and soon passed the position where Shen Xingyan was standing. As the area of a euro arable land increases, the boundaries of the planting space have begun to expand outward a lot. When the land expansion was completed, Shen Xingyan looked at the vast arable land and laughed foolishly. This feeling of pie falling from the sky and being bitten just right, if it were anyone else, they would probably be happy for a long time. The roots left over from the previous acre of wheat had also disappeared as Shen Xingyan completed the harvest. Shen Xingyan also discovered that the 4 acres of arable land in front of him seemed to have been rearranged and had reached the standard for direct sowing, without the need for turning the soil. The color of the soil is also much darker than before. This is also described in the book. As the amount of arable land increases, the quality of the soil will also increase and become more fertile. Shen Xingyan slowly bent down, grabbed a handful of soil and felt it quietly, and slowly began to accept this big gift package from the Xingyan world in his heart. Walking near the wheat that Wang Ke and the others had collected, Shen Xingyan instantly stored the mountain of wheat into his backpack with a thought. After separating the wheat grains and wheat straw appeared in 2 grids in the backpack space. Looking at the harvest in these 2 grids, Shen Xingyan checked the properties of the wheat grains with satisfaction. Item, wheat, high quality, value, 6 copper quantity, 1,800 attribute, a material for making food. Shen Xingyan, who originally just wanted to appreciate the number 1,800, was immediately fixated when he saw the word, high quality, after the word wheat in the introduction. You should know that any item with a suffix after its name is above the ordinary level. The materials and equipment in the Star Source world are divided into 4 major quality levels: ordinary, high quality, excellent, and perfect. Among them, there are several intermediate grades including premium, premium plus, excellent, excellent plus, and perfect, which together make up the quality system of the Star Source world. But now Shen Xingyan's wheat has reached high quality level, and its value is 3 times that of ordinary wheat, reaching 6 copper coins per kilogram. This is something Shen Xingyan never expected. If you calculate it this way, the copper coins I can get from this harvest are as much as 10,800. The final price made Shen Xingyan's eyes widen. It's so easy to make tens of thousands? When did making money become so easy? Shen Xingyan thought in disbelief. And this is only the initial stage. If his level is increased in the future, his professional skills will become stronger, and with the strength of the skeleton team, will he be able to earn money even faster in the future? Shen Xingyan already had the answer to this question in his heart. The huge surprise made him take a deep breath and calm his inner fluctuations. Then I checked the properties of the straw, item, wheat straw, high quality, value, 1 copper quantity, 800 attributes, a basic material. Shen Xingyan looked at the wheat straw that was worth a copper coin in the introduction and was a little surprised. How could high-quality wheat straw be exchanged for money? This was something he had not expected. He had only heard that straw was useless and worthless, but had never paid attention to the quality issues. This was also a small surprise. Shen Xingyan then came to the edge of the warehouse and checked the warehouse's properties, item, warehouse specifications, 8*15 grids, a simple yet powerful introduction, 120 grids. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but think about the question of whether he would be able to use all of these space grids in the future. Looking at the empty warehouse, Shen Xingyan separated 100 kilograms of wheat grains and placed them in the first compartment of the warehouse as food to guard the warehouse, which would have a better meaning. Then he opened the Xingyuan Mall and sold all the remaining wheat grains and straw, and finally got 11,000 copper coins. At this time, the words 11 silver coins were displayed in the lower right corner of Shen Xingyan's backpack. Shen Xingyan admired this beautiful number and then opened his property panel. It was discovered that his experience value had reached 186 points, of which 180 points were obtained from harvesting 1,800 kilograms of wheat, plus 5 points from performing professional skills 5 times, and the remaining 1 point was given when he awakened. The current experience value has far exceeded the 100 points required for upgrading. Shen Xingyan had never heard of anyone else meeting the upgrade standard after the first implantation, so he didn't know if his was the first case. Looking at the upgradable icon behind the experience value in the attribute panel, Shen Xingyan knew that the long-awaited moment had come. Aren't the many professionals fighting day and night just for this moment? Shen Xingyan took a deep breath, and his mind moved slightly to touch the upgrade button. Congratulations, your career level has been upgraded to level 2. I will reward you with +1 to all attributes, +2 free attribute points, and -1% cooldown of career skills. I hope you will keep up the good work and strive to improve. As the Xingyuan prompt appeared, Shen Xingyan felt his body tremble, and then quickly calmed down. He gently moved his body, followed by a slight click sound, and Shen Xingyan felt that his whole body became much more comfortable. When I opened my properties panel again, I saw a different scene. Name, Shen Xingyan No 11812043192527. Occupation, farmer. Professional skills, 1. Consume a certain amount of energy points to increase the growth rate of crops within the specified range by 10%. The larger the range, the more energy points are consumed. The interval is 10 hours, and the skill cooldown is 24 hours, -1%. Level 2 experience, 86/200 strength, 11 points agility, 11 points constitution, 12 points spirit, 11 points free attribute points, 2 points HP, 120/120 points rating, 18/18 points physical strength, 12/12 points physical attack, 11 points spell attack, 11 points defense, 12 points speed, 11 o'clock talent, summon skeleton. Summon a skeleton monster with all attributes of 1 to fight, cooling time 24 hours, money, 0 gold, 11 silver, 0 bronze. As the level increases, except for the original energy and talent skills, the 4 major attributes are improved by 1 point. The original energy can only be improved by using free attribute points or unlocking the mental method at level 10. It is said that talent can only be improved through rare items. Including 2 free attribute points, he gained a total of 6 attribute points from this upgrade, which was much faster than the improvement he gained through physical training in the real world. Shen Xingyan thought, no wonder people are so keen on improving themselves in the Xingyuan world. Chapter 24. Shen Xingyan looked at the attribute points given by Xingyuan after the level was upgraded, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This feeling is really addictive. Seeing that all 4 major attributes had improved a little, strength, agility and spirit had all reached 11 points. As for the physical attribute, since he had improved it by 1 point in reality and it was fed back to the star source world, his physical attribute now reached 12 points. If Shen Xingyan had 60 gold coins now, then the 6 attribute points given by the upgrade could all be transferred to the real world, completely making up for the results he might not be able to achieve even after a long period of hard training in the real world. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but sigh and shook his head, and then stopped thinking about these things. According to the current situation, although he makes money faster than ordinary combat professions, he still has a long way to go before extracting attribute points, so it is not something to rush. Then he looked at the words cooling time -1% behind the professional skill. The improvement of the skill was also within his expectations and was not very large. After all, it is just a small level upgrade now. When it reaches level 10, there should be a bigger upgrade. Seeing that the 2 free attribute points given by upgrading Indiana the attribute column had not yet been allocated, Shen Xingyan was hesitant to take any action. His original plan was to add it to the physical attribute, so that his physical strength would be improved, and the time for doing farm work and endurance would be longer, but the 3 acres of arable land rewarded by Xingyuan made him hesitant about allocating points. His eyes couldn't help but fall on the attributes of original energy. According to previous experience, it takes 5 energy points to use professional skills on 1 acre of land. Now that he owns 4 acres of arable land, it should be inferred that 20 energy points are needed to achieve perfect release. But now he only has 18 points of energy, which does not meet the required value. This will result in a waste of land resources. There is no way to manage the 4 acres of arable land in a unified manner. There is only one way to go, increase the upper limit of energy. The method of increasing the upper limit of energy has also been discussed in school. There are 4 ways to increase it. The first type is to automatically improve as time goes by. Basically, the upper limit of energy is increased by 1 point in 1 year. This type of improvement is synchronized between the star source world and the real world, and is the most basic type. The second is that after the occupation level is upgraded to level 10, the star source will increase the upper limit of the original energy. Each upgrade after level 10 will also give a corresponding increase. This kind of improvement only exists in the star source world. In the real world, if you want to upgrade, you can only spend money to extract it. The third method is to go to the star source mall and buy at a high price, or obtain rare treasures that can increase the upper limit of the original energy by killing monsters, receiving star source rewards, etc., so as to achieve the purpose of raising the upper limit of the original energy. The fourth method is to add free attribute points to the energy attribute, thereby increasing the energy limit. Now Shen Xingyan is considering the fourth situation, and the reason why he is so hesitant is because of his career. Due to the extremely long cooldown time of the skills, the farmer profession's reliance on energy is not as strong as that of the combat profession. This is true in the star origin world and even more so in the real world. If it weren't for the 3 acres of land rewarded by Xingyan, Shen Xingyan would not have to have this idea now. However, in the foreseeable future, he should not be short of gold coins. At that time, extracting attributes into the real world will be more practical than extracting energy into the real world. After weighing the pros and cons, Shen Xingyan finally decided to add free attribute points to energy. After all, compared to the possible future, he still felt that he should grasp the present. Even if there is a loss, it is at most 2 attribute points. He can improve it through training in reality, which he can still bear. Shen Xingyan made up his mind and no longer hesitated. He clicked twice on the plus sign behind the original energy, and the original energy increased from 18/18 to 20/20. Seeing that the attribute points were allocated, Shen Xingyan did not delay and directly waved his hand, opened the Xingyan shopping mall, and found the area with the first level seeds. All the first level seeds were displayed in front of Shen Xingyan in order: carrot, white radish, cabbage, and wheat. Looking at the 4 types of seeds listed, Shen Xingyan chose wheat seeds without any hesitation. Among the 4 types of first level seeds, wheat has the longest growth period, and accordingly, the value it produces after harvest is also the greatest. Vegetables like carrots, white radishes, and Chinese cabbages only have a short growth period of 3 days. Not only is it impossible to fully utilize the advantages of Shen Xingyan's professional skills, but it is also too difficult to use them to break the records of the Xingyan world. After all, today's advanced professional farmers have the blessing of super high planting speed, and the length of time they have stayed in the Xingyan world is not comparable to Shen Xingyan. It is unlikely to break the records they set in these 3 types of short-term crops. Moreover, Wang Ke and other little skeletons have adapted to the environment of growing wheat, so there is no need to change to other seeds for the time being. Shen Xingyan selected the seeds needed for 4 acres of land and clicked to buy, but found that he had to pay 280 copper coins, and this was at a 30% discount. If Xingyan hadn't given me wheat seeds at the beginning, I probably wouldn't even be able to afford the seeds. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but shook his head and sighed. Then he searched for hoes and sickles. Item: hoe attribute, attack +1 durability, 10/10 value, 10 copper, an essential tool for the farmer's profession. Item: scythe attribute, attack +1 durability, 10/10 value, 10 copper, an essential tool for the farmer's profession. Seeing that the hoes and sickles were not too expensive, Shen Xingyan bought 15 of each, spending 300 copper coins to prepare them for the little skeletons to use, and the extra ones were kept for future use. Although these tools do not have durability limits like his own set, they do not seem that expensive to Shen Xingyan now. After distributing hoes and seeds to skeletons including Wang Ke, Shen Xingyan and Wang Ke began to teach the other 4 skeletons how to sow seeds. It was not known whether they were already accustomed to doing farm work or what, but this teaching went exceptionally smoothly. Within 2 minutes, the 4 new skeletons began to work in an orderly manner, and the 4-acre sowing project officially entered the construction stage. Including Shen Xingyan, the other 7 workers took nearly 2 hours to successfully plant the wheat on the 4 acres of land. Shen Xingyan spent 100 copper coins to buy 20 buckets from the Xingyan Mall and place them next to the well for future use by the little skeletons. With 7 laborers working at the same time, it took less than 10 minutes to irrigate the entire farmland. Then Shen Xingyan walked to the well, took out his novice walking stick, selected the entire farmland as the target, and then activated his professional skills. As all the energy in the body began to flow violently, Shen Xingyan felt the fluctuations brought about by the flow of energy more clearly than before, and some insights emerged in his mind. It's a pity that he is not a combat profession, otherwise with this kind of understanding, he would be able to deal more damage when killing monsters. Chapter 25. Congratulations, you have successfully used your professional skills. Farmer professional experience points +1. As Shen Xingyan completed the spell, Xingyan's reminder also appeared in his ears. The wheat seeds on the 4 acres of arable land began to grow upwards like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. The spectacular scene was completely incomparable to the previous 1 acre of land. Standing in the middle of the field, Shen Xingyan felt as if the whole world was moving forward rapidly before his eyes. The traces of time became increasingly clear in his perception, and a breath of life also surrounded Shen Xingyan. This feeling disappeared little by little until the wheat flower stopped growing. What followed was the maintenance prompt of the Xingyan world. The maintenance work of the 4-acre wheat field was 3 or 4 times more labor-intensive than before. The 6 little skeletons in front of him were definitely too busy to handle it. Shen Xingyan could only do it himself and join the ranks of eliminating the prompts. After completing a maintenance job, Shen Xingyan saw that it was getting late and his sister should be finishing school soon, so he quickly bought 4 days worth of food from Xingyuan Mall. After all, the last bit of food in the house had been eaten up by him, and now the kitchen was so dry that even if a mouse came, it would have to leave in tears. We had to replenish it quickly. But he didn't dare to buy too much, for fear that the difference before and after would be too big, which would make his sister suspicious. After all, it was only the 6th day, and according to the initial cycle of the normal cycle, he had to harvest on the 10th day. Looking at the relatively easy to explain food in the backpack, Shen Xingyan thought, ding, it will cost 180 copper coins to extract this item worth 20 copper coins. Do you want to extract it? Sure enough, including the cost of purchasing food, the value of things in reality is equivalent to 10 times that of the star source world. After clicking OK, the food will disappear from the backpack. Shen Xingyan also returned to the real world and regained consciousness. Before he opened his eyes, the Xingyuan card on his forehead reminded him that the items he had extracted had been stored in the Xingyuan card and he could take them out at any time. Shen Xingyan stood up from the bed, silently thinking in his mind, and the food he had just bought from Xingyuan Mall appeared out of thin air in his hands. This was the first time Shen Xingyan experienced this kind of thing, and it felt quite strange. It felt like a magic trick when such a situation occurred in real life. After the novelty wore off, Shen Xingyan did not delay any longer. After all, the tasks in the professional space were still waiting for him. After quickly preparing dinner for her sister, she returned to her workspace. Seeing Wang Ke and other skeletons still working diligently, Shen Xingyan smiled with satisfaction and then joined in the work. Repetitive labor is performed in the farmer's professional space, and this kind of labor also makes Shen Xingyan, who has just received a lot of money, calm down slowly. He just looked at the nearly 10 silver coins in his backpack from time to time, and an expression of hope appeared on his face. If 1 acre of land could yield such a harvest, if the 4 acres of land were well taken care of, it might be much more than expected. Shen Xingyan was working with hope in his professional space, but compared to his peaceful environment, the battle situation in Chu Wei's 5-man combat team was extremely fierce at this time. They have to be very careful every time they kill a monster, for fear that if they are not careful, they will be rewarded with being offline and not allowed to log in for a day. Fortunately, there was Chu Wei, a powerful fire mage, providing fire support in the rear, otherwise it would have taken a lot of time to kill a wild monster. After the 5 of them worked together to kill a level 4 wild monster, Chu Wei asked her teammates to touch the corpse while she took out a potion to restore her energy and drank it. In their 5-member team, Chu Wei's equipment and weapons are all top-notch, and she can be said to be the undisputed leader. The next action plan must also be adjusted according to their own status. Killing the level 4 wild monster just now had used up all of her energy. While drinking the potion, she also kept observing the surrounding situation to see if there were any potential risks. In the wild, wild monsters are their targets, and they are also the targets of wild monsters. They need to pay attention to the movements of the wild monsters around them at all times to avoid any setbacks. Seeing that the low-level monsters around had no intention of approaching, Chu Wei finally felt relieved. As she relaxed, she couldn't help but start thinking about Shen Xingyan's current situation, and sighed slightly. He estimated that the remaining food in their home was almost gone, and the base had also cut off the supply of awakened people. What should he do? With his stubborn character, there would be no other result if I went to help him myself except being rejected. If it really doesn't work, I can only find a breakthrough through Xiaoying. Thinking of this, Chu Wei shook her head helplessly. It's sold, it's sold. Selling this thing to Xingyuan department store costs 3 silver coins. If sold privately, it can probably sell for more. We're lucky today. The teammates in front exclaimed, their joy beyond words. Although gaining experience is the main purpose of killing monsters, touching the corpse after each kill is a bit like opening a blind box, adding a little entertainment to their tense rhythm. Upon hearing this, Chu Wei also stood up and went to see what kind of item it was that made them so surprised. When I walked forward to take a look, I found out that it was a high-quality, grade 3 top, not too different from the one she was wearing. It would indeed be worth some money if sold privately. Boss, how do you decide on the distribution of this equipment? The knight in the 5-man team said to Chu Wei, and then handed over the shirt. Chu Wei did not take it, but directly said, let's follow the old rules. Go back and buy it for money, and then divide it equally. You can take it first. Seeing that the original energy had almost recovered, Chu Wei led the team to look for the next target. Chu Wei, who was lively and enthusiastic in front of Shen Xingyan, now had a stern look in her eyes, as if she didn't want anyone to approach her. A cold and elegant temperament appeared on her body, like a protective shield that isolated her from all negative influences from the outside world. In the professional space, Shen Xingyan was sitting on the ground exhausted to recover his strength, and bought 3 buns from the Xingyuan Mall and started eating. This thing can restore physical strength faster than steamed buns, so it is naturally more expensive. However, for Shen Xingyan now, he paid the full amount without blinking an eye. In the wheat field, under the leadership of Wang Ke, each skeleton was working in his own area. Shen Xingyan looked at Wang Ke with satisfaction. I have to say that Wang Ke does seem to have the potential to be a leader. Although it acts according to its own instructions, its execution is indeed eye-opening. In Shen Xingyan's eyes, the little skeleton with white bones is becoming more and more adorable. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.